Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
We are live on a Thursday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive to watch the show. What's up, everybody? Phillies lost last night, and it's amazing when the Phillies lose. It only goes to one guy, generally. Only goes to one guy when they lose. And it's apropos that it would go to the one guy because basically it's a team that has pushed all the right buttons and has gotten off to a great start. But we just can't accept sometimes that, hey, you're not going to win every game. And if you're not going to win every game, we want to micromanage the reason why. And everybody always has the answer. It's the manager. The manager is the problem with this baseball team. It is one of the laziest takes in the history of sports that the manager or the coach is the team's problem. The Phillies last night lost that game in a way that I thought they were going to lose the night before. They looked sloppy. They looked lethargic. It looked like a team that, I don't know, just got off the plane from London. If you want to blame the manager, it's the guy who says, I know more than the manager. I would be a better manager than that guy. Rob Thompson is the furthest thing from a problem for the Phillies right now. Rob Thompson is the exact guy that this Phillies team needs. He is, in my opinion, one of the key reasons why they are 46-21. If you want to micromanage a Wednesday night game and say that he didn't manage it the way that you would manage the game, all right. But to totally disregard the role he has had in the team being 46-21 is completely asinine. That would mean 46 nights a week you would be saying, or 46 times this year, you would be saying they're winning in spite of the manager. I got news for you. They have one of the worst outfield production in Major League Baseball. How does the manager get around the fact that his outfield flat out doesn't hit? If you look at the team as an outfield, I think they're hitting like 220. Yeah, that's an easy thing to pull off, to win 46 games at this stage of the season with an outfield that's hitting 220. On the flip side, they have the worst on-base percentage and one of the worst OPSs in the outfield, period. They get essentially no production from their outfield. None. So last night's game, as I'm watching the social media world erupt and crumble as Rob Thompson decides to pull Suarez from the game. And, you know, we talked about this yesterday. One of the things here is, look, right around this time of the year, or Sanchez, not Suarez, Sanchez last night, he goes 4 innings. He doesn't have his best stuff last night. Right? You could see this right from the get-go. 7 hits, 4 runs. So Sanchez just doesn't have it. And I guess you also have to keep in mind, everybody reacts differently to the jet lag situation. Some of these guys might be fine. Like me, for instance. It's Thursday. I think I'm fine. Like, I really didn't have that bad of a transition from coming back from London to here. Tuesday was a little rough for me. But other than that, I think I'm okay. But that doesn't mean that somebody else is still kind of zombieing through this week. Christopher Sanchez didn't have it last night. Ruiz is the guy they go to, right? Ruiz has had a pretty darn good season for this team. People are acting like they went to, Dylan Covey in this situation, right? Ruiz has been really good. It's the fifth inning. Now, why don't you bring in Spencer Turnbull? If you're not going to start him, isn't that the spot to piggyback him there? That's the question, right? Why not Turnbull? Well, Turnbull comes in the game, and he proceeds to give up 2 runs. He walks 4 guys. That's the guy that people were like, why not him? So that's the first criticism that's out there, right? Why not Turnbull? Between Ruiz and Turnbull last night, they were terrible, the two of them. They gave up 5 hits, 4 walks, 4 runs. They didn't have it last night. It's not because the manager picked the wrong guy. You put Turnbull in there, and he walks 4 guys. Is that going to be the right move? Of course not. They didn't lose the game last night because of Rob Thompson. They haven't lost games this year because Rob Thompson's the problem. They're winning games because Rob Thompson's the perfect right guy for this team. You know, baseball is a game that comfortability matters more than almost anything. Am I comfortable in my role? Do I love playing for my coach, the manager? He sets the tone. Anybody who doesn't understand that is a complete jackass, a know-it-all and a know-nothing. You know, everybody thinks they're the best X and O guy out there. Oh, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. Rob Thompson sets the tone for this team. These guys love playing for Rob Thompson. Is he the best X and O guy out there? I don't know. That's not for any of us to decide. You know why? There's no X's and O's in baseball anymore. This is all like wrestling. It's predetermined. These moves are all made before the game has even started. The analytics tell the managers what to do, when to pull guys, how many pitches he can throw, who's going to go first in the line, in the rotation, who's going to be the first guy out of the bullpen. That stuff is pretty much predetermined, discussed before a game. Hey, if Sanchez doesn't have it, 67 pitches, and he's not, Ruiz is the first guy tonight. Okay, great. That's what we're going to go to. Baseball has become a predetermined sport. How the players react to the man they have to answer to matters the most. You know, Joe Girardi won a World Series. And when the Phillies hired Joe Girardi, the know-nothings felt like, wow, he's going to be a huge improvement over Gabe Kapler. Because you didn't like Gabe Kapler, you didn't agree with Gabe Kapler because you felt that Gabe Kapler went by analytics more than being a baseball guy. So they brought in Joe Girardi, who was abysmal in Philadelphia. Not because Joe Girardi's an idiot, not because Joe Girardi isn't an X and O guy. He is. That's what he was known for. He's being a great tactician. But that part of the game has passed everybody by, sadly. But the problem with Joe Girardi was very much the same players. They didn't like him. They didn't want to play for him. They certainly don't play for him the way they play for Rob Thompson. Rob Thompson is the reason why the culture of this team has changed. Rob Thompson is the reason why this team is where they are. And if you're randomly deciding on a Wednesday night that he is the problem and I don't like this guy, man, we got big problems with people out there. If you ask the Phillies to a player, every guy on that team would look at the guy who doesn't like Rob Thompson and laugh right in his face and say, "Sir, you are an idiot." Now, does Rob Thompson make mistakes? Sure, absolutely. Did not putting Turnbull in the game last night in the 5th inning, is that a mistake? Well, hindsight being 20/20, it wasn't so bad because Turnbull was the worst of the pitchers that went in the game last night, and that includes Ruiz and Sanchez. He couldn't find the plate. He threw 38 pitches. He threw 18 strikes. Not great. Now, maybe Rob Thompson wants to start Spencer Turnbull. Maybe he's told he can't. We also have the problem that it's not a problem. It's a great problem to have. The Phillies are 10 games up in the division. So one of the things they have to try to do now is keep everybody, I don't want to say happy, but keep everybody playing. Keep everybody sharp. Keep everybody Scott Lauber was on yesterday, and he said, hey, when I put the lineup out and Stott's not in it and these people go crazy about why isn't Stott in the lineup tonight? And one of the reasons why Stott is not in the lineup tonight is, guess what? He wants to get other guys playing time. Now, Stott was in the lineup last night. I'm just giving an example. People have to realize there's 162 games. Cal Ripken ain't playing every day anymore. In today's baseball world, guys get days off. And specifically, left-handed hitters get days off. So you have a situation where the Phillies right now are so good that they're now their own worst enemy. Because the fan base is so used to being downrodden and complaining. And now it's like, hey, here's a nice thing. Let me take a poop on it. You're 10 games up on the Braves. It's June. Do you want them to win every single night? It's not realistic. And when they do lose, you can't just say, Rob Thompson cost them that game again. Because if you're going to say that, there are many nights throughout the year that you have to say, well, guess what? They won this game tonight because this team has composure. This team likes playing for their manager. This team is a team that is 46-21, not in spite of, because of Rob Thompson. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's where we start today. You know, I was watching the game last night. I'm going through my X feed, and I'm just saying, like, holy mackerel. Like, it is unbelievable to me how people watch a game so differently, right? People watch a game, and that's everybody's prerogative, right? Everybody's allowed to watch a game the way you want to. This tweet here says the level of perfection that fans expect out of Rob Thompson is unrealistic. Yes, it is unrealistic because we all think, right? We all think that because we would have done something or made a move that Rob Thompson didn't make, that move would then work, right? Like the people last night that said, if you have Spencer Turnbull, why wouldn't you use him? Because obviously Ruiz, he did not pitch well yesterday either. So I'm not sitting here saying, see, he made the right move. None of them were the right move. Turnbull sucked, and so did Ruiz. They both were the wrong move last night. How the hell is Rob Thompson supposed to know that? Hey, I'm calling on guys. It's the fifth inning. Because Sanchez couldn't get out of the fourth, I have to go to my lesser bullpen arms. So he goes to Ruiz, and Ruiz doesn't pitch all that well. And then he goes to Turnbull, and he's worse. Tough night at the office. The Merrifield error is terrible. You know, I'm trying to defend Merrifield the last couple of days. I want to see them give Merrifield a shot. But that error last night, it's a terrible error. Right? What inning was that error in? Do you remember the Merrifield error last night? It's a throwing error that you can't have happen. It's a bad error, and Merrifield's a guy it's perplexing to me. And it's one of these guys that it was in the fifth last night. It's in the fifth inning last night, and in that inning, you end up giving up 5 runs on 6 hits and an error. The error that Merrifield makes is a huge play in the game because it gives up 2 runs. You can't have it. Can't have it, especially from a guy who is struggling. He is trying to find his way everywhere. He had a hit last night. He walked twice, so he's on base 3 times last night. Drove in a run. But what do we remember? That error in the fifth that caused the 5 runs to come home. Well, you lost the game last night basically because that inning. Basically because that inning. And that error is, to me, the standout of this team has generally not been sloppy. This team has generally not had those nights. Last night was one of those nights, and it's twofold. One, the bullpen came in. They couldn't throw strikes. Turnbull's all over the place. He's walking guys, and then you make the error. You make the error, and that kills you. And it's the two things. This isn't a managerial situation last night. Your team was sloppy last night. That's all. The team was sloppy last night. And Merrifield, disappointing. Very disappointing. Because I had anticipations when they signed this guy that he was a great fit for with what he brings to the table. That fit hasn't worked for whatever reason. Now, you could say Rob Thompson, and it's not even really Rob Thompson. The organization puts the lineups together with Rob Thompson. So I'm not saying that why isn't he playing him more. I think it's an organizational thing. They're just not sold that Merrifield's doing a good enough job right now. So that's where we start today. You guys can get involved. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. We got a couple to start off with. Jerry and Absecon. What's up, Jerry? Says, my biggest problem with them swinging at bad pitches. Who's their batting coach? Why can't he see what's going on? It's Kevin Long is the batting coach. You're talking about approach here, I guess, swinging at bad pitches. We're going to talk to Dave Gallagher, who was a hitting coach in the major leagues for years. He's going to join us tonight at 5 o'clock. So we'll talk to him about that. Does he see a problem in their approach, swinging at bad pitches? I don't know that ultimately, like, Castellanos has a terrible approach. He swings at a lot of bad pitches. I think Bohm right now. Bohm has been a guy that had a tremendous approach to get to where he got this year. And his approach has failed him in the last month here, and he is really struggling. So there's a couple of things there. What is this guy saying? You're killing me, Smalls. As the fellow broadcaster, I hate to be that guy, but it's Thompson, no P. Thompson. Yeah, Rob Thompson. I guess it sounds like a P coming through the radio, but come on, Tom. You're better than that. Jeez. It's Thompson.
I hear you saying Thompson.
Yeah, T-O-M, no P.
Yeah, I don't hear you saying a P.
I'm not saying a P. It might sound like a P coming through the radio.
Maybe subconsciously someone's hearing.
But for that guy to take the time out of his day, come on, Tom, at Cape May Courthouse, that's a terrible job by you.
That's a waste.
Come on. I wish we had back to where you had data and you got charged for that text. That's awful.
Can we send him a fine?
Yeah.
Can we fine him to the phone?
Right. Like we don't know his name is Rob Thompson with no P. You really, really took the time to do that today? Tom, come on. I'm over here defending the guy. You don't think I know his name? Jesus. I mean, come on, Tom. That's in the Hall of Fame of text, of the worst text we've ever gotten. And that's a long list of people.
It is a long list.
This is on the Mount Rushmore of just, you're killing me, Smalls.
That's up there with some of the 305 texts.
He's got his own wing.
Oh, yeah, he's got his own wing now.
He's got his own wing in the Hall of Fame of awful text takes. Yeah. So what are some of the takes out there? 609-403-0973. I just thought the team looked a little lethargic last night. They just looked like it's all kind of catching up to them maybe. And I thought this week was a tough week for them. But overall, I didn't think Sanchez was very sharp. Turnbull was certainly not sharp. He was all over the place last night. In the lineup, you had chances last night. You had runners in scoring position, 13 runners in scoring position, which was more than Boston had last night. But that error kills you.
Yeah, I just felt like last night, Mike, was just a game where you just didn't have it. And that happens on nights. And I think that this gets back to the question that we have had about, do they need to add hitting? Because you saw in a game last night where maybe if you had another guy, maybe not a superstar or a star player, but just another dependable hitter in the lineup, to maybe that person gets you some of those runners in who are left on base.
I definitely think there's conversation to be had. Bohm is really starting to cool off and struggle. He's in the middle of your lineup, but you're missing three bats in the lineup right now. And I think that's kind of is being, so you're saying if you have one more guy, well, yeah, Turner's not here, Realmuto's not here, Marsh isn't here. Those guys are three pretty key guys that lengthen your lineup out. Now, one point about that is, even with Turner, Realmuto, and Marsh, they still don't really have that middle. Like Bohm, as much as I like Bohm, I don't think he's a 4-hitter.
He's not a traditional 4-hitter, no.
No, he's kind of miscasted in that role, and I don't know what you do about that. We talked a lot about this last year. What do you do? Because if Castellanos is this version that we're getting, he's not the guy.
Right.
He was the guy last year. He had a good year, and then he cooled off to where they had to put Bohm there late in the year because Castellanos was so bad. So they're back to the problem they had last year, which is they don't really have a traditional guy to hit behind Harper. So is that, on top of everything, what they need to find? Somebody to hit behind Harper. Now, the question will be, Real Muto was hitting there. When Turner comes back, he'll go to 2. The problem is Real Muto won't be here most likely. So you're still going to be kind of trying to find your way. Who goes to that 4 hole, or do you need to find that guy? That's really the question.
And if you have to find that guy, what are you willing to give up to get that guy? Is what I want to know, Mike.
Yeah, well, I guess another question is that guy even out there?
Like, for example, Luis Robert Jr., right? Would he be a 4-hole hitter for you?
On this team, most likely. I mean, on this team, he probably, 38 home runs last year, not having the same success. He's had some injury issues this year. On this team,
last year was really the only year he's played a full season.
Yeah, he's had. Yeah, now 38 home runs is something that this team could certainly add to their lineup if you can get a big power guy like that. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. We are streaming live video on the X platform. Just follow us at 973 ESPN. To watch the show, to find us, use the hashtag SB Live. Tom from Margate chimes in. He says, hey, Mike, all the guys who don't love Topper must have hated Charlie Manuel. Thompson has the perfect temperament for this baseball team, not to be fined like the other Tom. I don't know the other Tom from Margate, but Tom from Cape May Courthouse is in the Hall of Fame today.
Up at the Hall of Shame. Shame.
Nah,
Shame.
he's a good dude, I'm sure. Come on, he's better than that. More Sports Bash coming up, 97.3 ESPN.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
.229 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Follow us there. Use the hashtag SB Live. See the video. You can comment along on the video. If you open up the video box, it says say something at the bottom so you can get your comments up on the screen. Like Bill, who is watching on the X platform. And because of him, I think we fixed the problem, Bill. Let me know if we did fix the issue with the audio on the X platform, but I think it should be back and okay, rocking and rolling. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973 is the text board. You can always hit us up there and let us know your thoughts on everything. You know, Phils lose last night, and it's a sloppy game. I mean, they get into a lead early in the game, and as we talked about yesterday, Kyle Schwarber starting to get going in the month of June here. He kind of got rocking and rolling last night, starts the game off. Castellanos, they get 2 runs early in the game, and then they get 2 more runs in the fourth, and you're thinking, man, this team, they got off the plane from in London and just never slowed down. Castellanos, couple hits, Harper, couple hits. But then the pitching was the issue last night. And the pitching was the issue last night to lose a game. I don't know that I feel all that worried about the pitching being a problem long term with this team. You know, if you were telling me, hey, you're complaining because the Phillies lost last night because it was a 2-1 game they lost, okay, that's a different story. That rings a little differently. But generally the Phillies pitching is not their problem. Sanchez just wasn't great last night. And their bullpen generally has been outstanding. You had to go to 2 guys that, I got to be honest, I don't know how much Ruiz and Spencer Turnbull are getting called on to pitch out of the bullpen in playoff games. So anytime a team loses in that fashion, those are outlier losses. Those are losses that happen out of the ordinary. Why'd you lose last night? Well, Ruiz and Turnbull stunk. Well, in a World Series situation, and everything is big picture with this team, it's all about winning the World Series. Why'd you lose? I don't know that in a World Series game my answer is going to be Ruiz and Turnbull just didn't have it tonight. I mean, if that happens, guess what? I got news for you. Probably going to lose that game. If I have to go to Ruiz and Turnbull in a World Series game, it means I probably am struggling. My starter struggled. And guess what? The starter generally hasn't struggled much this year. He's going to every now and then when he does, this is the result. 8-6 loss, error. 2 performers in the middle of the 5th and the 6th didn't have it last night. No surprise here.
I think both can be true. You can say, yes, you're not going to Turnbull and Ruiz in big game situations in the playoffs, but I do think you could still use one more power-throwing right-handed arm in that bullpen just because of the fact that basically Alvarado and Strom have pitched, I think it's almost exactly half the games this year. So I would personally like to see at least one more extra guy out there.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but my point is the 2 you have, they're not it.
Well, Turnbull is definitely not it. I'm concerned that he just might not be cut out for this bullpen thing.
Strong possibility. I think we all acknowledge that Turnbull was the better of the 2, but that's not changing. I mean, Walker pitched well in London. He makes more money. We all get it. This is the world we live in, right? Sadly, I mean, we would all love to be in situations where fairness wins, right? Rules supreme. Too many times salary wins. And in this case, salary's winning. I mean, Taijuan Walker's salary says, I'm better than you, therefore I get the job.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell them to go DFA or send Turnbull down to the minor leagues, but he has allowed at least 1 earned run in 5 of his last 6 relief appearances. So there obviously is something going on with him right now, Mike. There's something that I don't know if he's not comfortable, if he's just having a bad run of it, but there's obviously something with him coming out of the bullpen that is extremely different for him than being a starter.
Yeah, he has, and I talked about this before, like neither Walker nor Turnbull had never pitched out of the bullpen before. So you were going to have one guy doing something that he's never done before. And it's not like they're both young guys. These are guys who have had a lot of Major League Baseball experience. So you weren't going to just say, hey, old horse, try new trick.
Right.
Like, it wasn't happening. So this is the inevitability that comes into play here. So people who are complaining about Rob Thompson here, I mean, I got news for you. Rob Thompson's not deciding to not pitch Spencer Turnbull as the 5th starter. He's got somebody saying, look, we're paying him. He's got to be the guy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, I hate to make you be the guy that's the face of this, but if you're not smart enough to figure that out, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, you know, the problem is I think people don't have the context because, one, as you said before, Mike, people love to blame the manager. It's a lazy go-to move for a lot of people. The other side, people don't understand the dynamics of this organization. You know, Bryce Harper mentioned this when he was on MLB Network on Friday evening. Well, it was at least aired on Friday evening. They're talking about how he said, you know, one of the things that Harper loves is that the front office is always around. He said, Dave Dombrowski, he said, he's always around the batting cage. He's always around the clubhouse. He said, anytime a guy wants to go talk to him or pick his brain, he's there and he is involved in everything every day. I understand that for the classic baseball fan, they don't understand or think of the executive of the organization in that role. But this is who the Phillies are. The Phillies are an organization where the upper management is very, not controlling, but they are involved in the game operation.
Every team's front office is involved in the game operation. Now, Dave Dombrowski might come off as this all shucks kind of, well, you know, our manager, he's the one that does everything. They all sit down and have a conversation. Right. They're all on the same page here. And maybe they're not on the same page. Like Rob Thompson might say, guys, you know, come on, Walker's not the guy. And they might say, come on, Topper, what's the difference? We're paying him $18 million. Middleton wants some pitching. All right. I mean, this is how this kind of works out
right
in a lot of these situations. I don't think Rob Thompson, I think Rob and everybody acknowledges that Spencer's been the better option, but that's not the reality of where we live right now in professional sports. So, and look, I said before, I don't even really have that big of a problem with Taijuan Walker. He's the fifth starter. He generally eats up innings for you. Now, I don't think Taijuan's going to pitch long term. I don't think he'll be pitching. Well, that's hard to say now. If the Phillies are up 12 games in August, guess what? They'd probably keep Taijuan Walker pitching. Just keep eating up the innings so that someone else doesn't have to keep going out there.
Exactly.
Because the Phillies don't have any intention of pitching Taijuan Walker in the playoffs. So everybody wants to, the guy who tweeted out before, that everybody wants perfection. It's impossible to have perfection in a game of failure. Last night, there wasn't a move that Rob Thompson would have made in the fifth inning that was going to change the outcome of that game, because Spencer Turnbull obviously didn't have it last night. So you think if he came in the fifth, he would have been sharper? Probably not. The error that Whit Merrifield makes changes the entire inning, and it causes the Phillies to be having a 4-run lead. They're down all of a sudden.
And that's not Rob Thompson's fault. Rob Thompson didn't fumble the throw.
Well, I can see why is he in the lineup. Why not keep Socha at short, keep Stott at set? I mean, everything that happens, it's the opposite answer. Why are you playing Merrifield? He hasn't done anything this year. He's been terrible. He doesn't deserve to play. Whereas I look at it as the exact opposite. This is the guy you signed. When you signed the guy, the plan was that he's there to help us win a championship, something we've been coming short of. Why? Well, because we don't have this guy who makes contact, gets on base, has speed. And now we do. I think Merrifield has been easily the most disappointing thing to me, and that's including Castellanos. Because Castellanos, to me, he's streaky. I mean, he can get streaky hot and be up to 250 if he, goes 15 for his, whatever it would be to get him to 250. But I could see Castellanos getting there. Merrifield was supposed to be a steady Eddie kind of guy. Now, you could make the argument, you could look this up. First half of the year last year, he was an all-star. He was very good. Second half of the year, Merrifield started to show signs that he was starting to dip a little bit. But the Phillies make the decision to sign him, and, hey, here we are. But I contend, one of the things when you set out a goal in baseball, for instance, okay, or any sport, what is the ceiling of our team? We think we're a World Series team. Okay. If the ceiling of your team in your mind is a World Series, what is the lineup that maximizes that you feel that way? I feel we can win a World Series if X, Y, and Z are all at their best. And therefore, your next question is, are you hitting your ceiling with the other guy? If X, Y, Z, and all the way through are not performing, is somebody else there that if you replace one of those underperforming players, that you could still reach your ceiling? Or is it worth waiting for the guy to reach his ceiling? That, to me, is a big way of how you run a team. I might have a guy who's really struggling, but our perception is when he's at his best, we have a chance to win the World Series. I could replace him, but I'm just going to replace him with a guy that's not going to let us hit our ceiling. He might be better. I have a guy hitting 181. This guy might be better, but he's going to hit 220. If I have a guy hitting 220, that's not helping me either. I need the guy hitting 181 to get up to 250. And that, to me, is why I think Merrifield should be getting more of a burn here.
To your question about him last year, in the first half of the year, he batted 286. Second half of the year, he batted 256. First half of last year.
That's pretty close, though.
His on-base percentage was 342. It dropped to 286 in the second half.
Not good.
So he did have numbers that dropped in the second half of last year.
609-403-0973. News on Brandon Marsh, by the way. So Marsh is going to go to Reading tonight. He's playing at Reading tonight. I imagine that Marsh will be in the lineup this weekend with Baltimore, in Baltimore. And you could get Trey Turner back this weekend, too. So that's two guys that could be coming back. Who goes? Is Merrifield in any trouble? Anybody think?
I think you at least have to have a conversation about it because overall this year he has been extremely disappointing, as you said.
Hit that double last night.
Well,
Actually,
last
it
night.
wasn't a double. That was a. It could have been a double, but you're at Fenway. He hit that ball down the line.
It clinked off the jetted wall, and he hit a home run in London.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well,
he's not
Marsh
bad.
is going to come back. Who goes? Does Dahl go back, or does Weston Wilson go back? Or are we at the point, June 13th, where they have to then make a decision on Pache/Rojas, that crew?
I mean, I feel like the easy answer would just be Weston Wilson because he's played not at all.
He did start a game in London. But Weston Wilson is a guy who adds versatility. He plays infield and outfield.
He does.
So he's an extra infielder/outfielder.
So what do you value more, the versatility, or do you value?
Well, you have Merrifield who does that, but then really Merrifield becomes the only kind of backup. Now, it depends. If Turner comes back, now you have Sosa kind of hanging around.
Right.
So does David Dahl become because now when Marsh comes back, do you just send Dahl back? It's another, or do you keep Dahl, who that's another outfielder, but he's left-handed.
He's left-handed. That's the problem.
Yeah, Marsh is also left-handed.
I mean, the natural swap is Marsh for Dahl, but Dahl has actually been hitting.
Dahl's giving you a little something, but
he's giving you something.
he's only played 5 games. I mean, that's Holder.
Well, I mean, those
Holder
5
Yankees
games, he's giving you something more than some of the other guys were giving you.
Yeah, but again, it's a 5-game sample. We can't go crazy over a 5-game sample.
Sure, I'm not saying you start him every day, but I mean, what do you value more, the guy who's giving you production or the guy who's versatile?
I mean, you're saying the guy who's giving you production, and I'm saying it's 5 games. It's like a guy who jumps out, hits 400 with 2 home runs the first week. You pick him up on your fantasy, and at the end of the year, he's hitting 191 with the same 2 home runs that he hit in the first week of the season. Like, I'm not going to go crazy, but like Dave Dahl is a definitive answer. He can't go anywhere because he's hit 2 home runs in his first 5 games.
I'm just not a fan of telling a guy, hey, you did such a good job, we're sending you back to the minor league.
Oh, I don't like it. I mean, hey, you didn't do anything wrong, but look, Brandon Marsh is back. You were here for Marsh. Now you got to go. I mean, I'm not going to – I can't play everybody.
Right.
And you got Cody Clemens, too, who's going to be coming back soon.
Cody Clemens is a tough decision,
And he's
too.
another guy, right.
He's left-handed.
Yeah. Todd and Brigantine says goodbye, Pache. You have Rojas' glove, and he doesn't bring anything to the plate, also as an option. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, Todd. The Phillies have a big enough sample size on the Pache-Rojas duo there that they would start thinking about one of those 2 guys. You're going to have these decisions. We're at Thursday. Marsh is playing tonight at Reading. He's eligible to come off the injured list tonight. I guess he's getting, they want to get him some rehab at bats. But I would imagine it's going to be tonight, maybe tomorrow, and then he's down in Baltimore, I would imagine, by this weekend. And then if Trey Turner's back and ready to play by this weekend, that's 2 guys that are going to be back.
It really sounds to me, Mike, like you're saying, look, we just need to hold the course, let these guys get back in the lineup before we make any drastic decisions.
Well, we all know that the lineup's going to look a little different when everybody's back.
Right.
So, no panic button there. Sports Bash Live, yeah, I mean, it's still a fluid. But my one question is, have they seen enough of Pache and Rojas? Is there a big enough sample size on those 2 guys? Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I have a deal for you guys out there. Bring any written estimate for a new 2024 Acura from another Acura dealer over to my friend Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City, and he will beat that price by $500 and give you an additional $500 on your trade. How about that? You go to another Acura dealer in the area. How much is the Acura? They give you the price. Bring it to Rocco. He beats that price by $500 and then gives you $500 extra on your trade. That's the deal right there. And now through June 30th, get a 36-month lease, 2024 Integra, $299 a month, which is $49.95 down. That's at Key Acura, Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. I like that deal. You give me a price, and this guy, I walk in with that price. Rocco, here's the price. This is what they gave me. And he says, all right, it's $500 less. I like that. All right, coming up, more Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Could Jason Kelsey already be thinking about leaving ESPN? I have the details next on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Just search hashtag SB Live.
Actual speeds vary.
It's Mike Gill
Do I have everybody's attention now?
on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:52 on the Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN. So we all know Jason Kelce retired, and then he is joining the ESPN Monday Night Football pre-game extravaganza, the Monday Night Countdown show. He's not going to be a part of the broadcast game, but he's going to be a part of the pre-game, pre-halftime, post-game show. But is he already thinking about another opportunity, and that would cause him to leave the broadcast booth? He talked about it on the latest New Heights podcast.
Listen, I'll back out of the TV deal right now if you tell me I could own the Philadelphia Eagles.
What? No way.
Come on now. Are you kidding me?
No way.
Get to be an owner? That's like another level.
So him and Travis are going back and forth. Travis says, hey, I would like to do broadcasting, and I guess Jason chimes in.
Yeah, so the conversation, for those who didn't see the story, basically last week Bloomberg reported that Jeffrey Lurie is looking into the idea of adding a minority stakeholder for the team. Simple procedure, you could add somebody for like 1 or 2% ownership just to add an influx of cash or whatever reason they want to do it. And Jason is like, I would love to be a part-time owner of the Eagles. You want to join me, Travis? He's like, no. He's like, I want to go into broadcasting. And Jason's like, listen, man, that's what the audio heard. I'm going to leave broadcast if I can own the Eagles.
Yeah, he's like, basically, you tell me I can have a minority stake in ownership of the Philadelphia Eagles, I am out on this Monday Night Football thing.
Now, they also did admit, I'm writing the article on 97.3 ESPN.com right now. They did admit in the podcast, though, that neither one of them has the financials to actually be a minority owner of an NFL team.
Well, I mean, it depends. How minority owner do you want to be?
So, for example, according to the Bloomberg News article, they project to be a 1% owner in the Eagles. You would probably have to put up about $70 million.
All right, so I'm out.
Jason Kelce's net worth, Mike, is $40 million.
So he's out. What about him and Travis together? What about Taylor Swift getting involved?
Well, that was funny you mentioned that because they all brought up the idea of giving the money to Kylie, and she could be the minority owner. And they use her.
There you go.
And then they admitted, that's a pretty messed up job. We're using my wife to get what we want.
Coming up on the other side, is Joel Embiid right? Did the Bucks give the Celtics a key to the title? And in turn, it sparks a process conversation. Don't go away. That's next. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
His role is anything you need on a given night, he'll do. And this is what I've been saying about him forever. You need someone to go out and score you 20 points, he'll do it. You need someone to shut down your best player, he'll do it. You need someone to be a great leader, great attitude guy, great glue guy, all that stuff, he'll do it. Those are 3 different role players, right? You usually have one player to fill the first role, and another player to fill the second role, and a third player to fill the third role. He's a roles player.
Mike Greenberg on Greeny talking about Drew Holiday, to which last night Joel Embiid sent out a somewhat interesting tweet where he said the Bucks just gave the Celtics the championship, to which others said, the Sixers once had Drew Holiday, and that just sparked a whole nother band of conversation because, as we all know, Holiday is the first trade of the Sam Hinkie process era. He was a 22-year-old all-star player at the time, and basically the Sixers decided to move on from Drew Holiday. But context is king here, so let's break this down real quick. A tweet from Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I like Marcus. I don't have a problem with his tweet. But he says, Drew Holiday was the first casualty of the Sixers process. Already a superb 22-year-old two-way point guard, he was traded for Nerlens Noel and a pick. In a few weeks, he'll be a two-time NBA champion and a two-time gold medalist. Meanwhile, none of the pieces of the process has won anything. Everything he said is 100% spot on accurate. But context is king. So let's break it down here. Drew Holiday was the first casualty of the process because just what Greeny said. He is the total package as a role player. Now, he's not a role player in the sense of being a quote-unquote role player, but he fills multiple roles. He is a defensive player. He is a guy who can score 20. He is everything a championship team needs. Here's the problem. Generally, he's the final piece of the championship puzzle, not the first piece. Sadly, the Sixers had him first. And by getting him first, he didn't have anybody like, Giannis Antetokounmpo to play with. By getting Drew Holiday first, he didn't have anybody like, I don't know, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown playing side by side him. Look, Holiday's great, but what makes him great is he's the glue that puts Antetokounmpo and Middleton to the next level because he's the guy in the middle. So everybody can take their shots at the process and trading Holiday, and the Sixers had him. The fact of the matter is this. If Drew Holiday's on the team, you know who's not? Joel Embiid. And therefore, who is Drew Holiday playing with that he is the glue for in Philadelphia? Because I got news for Drew Holiday's not good enough by himself to win a championship. I think we all can agree on that. We all can agree on that Drew Holiday, by himself as the best player on a team, he's not winning a title, and that's what the Sixers said. Right now, this guy's our best player. We can't win a title with Drew Holiday being the best player, and if he's our best player, we're good enough to be 38-42. And being 38-42, we're never going to get Drew Holiday the player that, or really the two players. Because everywhere Holiday has gone, he's kind of been the third guy. He's kind of been that guy that took Antetokounmpo and Middleton, and he gave them the third guy. He goes to Boston, and he becomes that third guy that this Boston team has been lacking. Although I will say this. I did a show. I was at Chickies and Pete's in Egg Harbor Township the day. I remember it pretty vividly. The Celtics had just beaten the Sixers. And I said there is one player in this game that the Celtics have that the Sixers just don't have. They've lacked this type of player for basically the process era, like whatever you want to call that, and the post-process era. Anytime the Sixers and the Celtics have kind of got together, this type of player is a guy the Sixers just lack. You know, they don't have a Tatum, they don't have a Brown. The Sixers are different. They have Maxey and they have Embiid, and so they go about it a different way. But the guy the Sixers just lack, they don't have the Derek White. Holiday's great, but Derek White is the guy, to me, that the Sixers have just been lacking. He does everything just quietly, but in big moments. You need that big three. Oh, man, it's that White guy again. You need that big stop, Derek White again. Last night he hits the two clutch free throws down the stretch. He had 4 threes last night. You know, you look at the Celtics last night in that game, 42 minutes from Tatum, 42 from Holiday, 42 from White, 41 from Brown, 37 from Horford. They only played 8 guys in an NBA Finals game on the road last night, and they won. And their bench gave them a whole production of 12 points. The Celtics win because their stars and their starters deliver it for them. You know, we talk about the depth and all these things when we're looking at a season. It's great to have depth. It's great to get this, and it's great to get that. But the Celtics are not relying on Tillman and Pritchard and Hauser off the bench to help them win an NBA championship. They are relying on Jason Tatum. And by the way, Porzingis didn't even play last night. It's one of the reasons why they only played 8 guys. So normally I would imagine Tillman, his minutes are even less if Porzingis is there. But still, the point I'm making is the Celtics are winning because their starters are giving it, they're going full gas here, 42 minutes a night. And I can't be critical. You want to look at the Celtics and say, it's Boston. I hate that team. They're Boston. I got to respect what they're doing, man. I got to respect the fact that their starters are giving it everything they got. They are emptying the tank in this series. Game 2, Tatum, 45. Brown, 42. Holiday, 41. White, 38. And I talked about White again. White is the player the Sixers just completely lack. He is the role player, the secondary player who's the non-all-star player, but he comes up big. He's there, Tobias Harris. He's not the all-star. The difference is Tobias Harris for you doesn't show up. White does. He's the other guy that doesn't get the accolades. He's the other guy, and he just absolutely is the guy the Sixers have constantly lacked. The guy who doesn't make the All-Star game, the guy who isn't like the defensive stopper. He's just that guy. He can score, he can defend, he can rebound, he can shoot. He does it all, but he's just not on the same level as the All-Star player. That's a guy that I think is so unheralded for the Boston Celtics. It is a guy that the Sixers have constantly lacked, and I think he's another big reason. You talk about Drew Holiday, but I think Derek White, I know he's been on the teams in the past, but he's the perfect 4 guy. When he's your 4th or now 5th guy with Porzingis, but it's a really good team. It's a really good team. But I do want to stress, yes, Holiday is going to be a 2-time champion, a 2-time gold medalist. Does anybody in the listening audience think that he'd be a 2-time champion and 2-time gold medalist if the Sixers kept him?
Absolutely not.
Of course not.
But it's not just because of who he would have played with here. I would argue, Mike, that he would not be the player he is right now if he didn't go on that journey of being traded multiple times.
Which is also an indictment on the Sixers.
Sure. But it's the attitude of sometimes you got to go through something before you get to somewhere. You can't reach the mountaintop in a lateral manner. You got to climb the mountain. I think Drew Holiday, it has been the accruing of all of these years in the NBA that has made him into this plug-in, you can win a championship guy. Because, yes, the Sixers would love to have a guy like Derek White or Drew Holiday right now. But it's part of the reason why the Sixers, Mike, shouldn't go out and get a guy like Paul George. Because you don't need a Paul George. The Celtics are proving to you, Mike, that you don't need Paul George. You need Drew Holiday. Not literally.
Can you make an argument, though, and it's not a great argument in this case because he's not playing, or he didn't play last night, but that their version of Paul George is Porzingis, a guy who's been good, disappointing, and just maybe needs to be in the right place?
I only disagree because Porzingis hasn't played most of the postseason. And Drew Holiday and Derek White have played every single game of every single round.
Yeah, if I can, say, give me a guy, Holiday has been fantastic, everywhere he's gone. He like I said, I think Greeny's quote there was great. He's a roles player.
Plural.
He has multiple roles. He's not like that all-star, perennial all-star, but he's very good, and he's the guy that kind of is the linchpin between Tatum and Brown.
Right.
And he was that guy between Antetokounmpo and Middleton. So, but I think White is an underrated part of all this.
But the thing is, you need both of those kind of guys. The Sixers need a guy who can be the third guy with Embiid and Maxey, but they also need the fourth guy who's just going to go out there and do his job. And Mike, you said it during the Knicks series. If Tobias Harris just would have scored some points, they would have won that series.
Oh, there's the one game where Oubre gave you nothing and they lost. I mean, he scored like 2 points or 4
Right.
points and he averages whatever it is. And he was like more than half off of his average.
So you don't need all-stars in order to get that done. You need guys who will just show up. And I know that sounds very simplistic, but Boston is proving that, listen, when they were in the NBA Finals 2 years ago, they were nowhere as good as they are now. Every stat, they are scoring more points in this NBA Finals. They're allowing less points. Their defense is getting more steals, more blocks than 2 years ago. You know who they had 2 years ago? Tatum and Brown. You know who they didn't have 2 years ago? Drew Holiday. It literally doesn't, they didn't have to add a Paul George, Jimmy Butler caliber player.
Text message from Jay in Atlantic City, 609-403-0973. He says, Mike, here's the question. I meant to ask just as the Sixers got put out of the playoffs, but why don't they find these guys like a Derek White for the Celtics or all those guys that stepped up for New York when you really hadn't heard much about them before the series? How do the Sixers keep missing out on guys like that? They always seem to miss out on those guys. That's a great question. They do a bad job in finding, and it's funny because there's a lot of times where they go out and get guys, and it feels like it's the right kind of guy. Like they lost to Miami, they needed toughness, they went and got a PJ Tucker. I thought they overpaid him, and I thought that was ridiculous, but that was the type of guy they seemed like they were lacking. PJ Tucker, who had kind of buried them in the series they played against him.
Right.
Then he goes out, and he is not a big part of the team. I mean, PJ Tucker, he had a decent playoff, much better than the regular season. He was terrible in the regular season, but then, they've gone out and got the guy like a Danny Green who had championship pedigree. The problem with Danny Green, I think, he was kind of past his prime.
Right.
So they always seem to get guys that you're like at the time, hey, this guy's an interesting fit for them. I mean, all right, he kind of something they lack, and it just hasn't worked out. The year that the Celtics traded for Derek White at the deadline, he was in Utah, and they made that trade. It just seems like an unassuming trade, but it worked out. I mean, it's just like you contend if the Sixers traded for Derek White instead of the Celtics, are they in a different spot? Because he is that kind of guy that is the perfect third or fourth guy that, hey, this guy's struggling, that guy's struggling, I can make shots. That's where Tobias Harris failed this team. Being the third guy who's not an all-star player, but not being able to be there when the other guys aren't. Derek White, he's another guy, but he's not an all-star player, but he's there when the other guys aren't.
I think it's more than fair to say that if the Sixers had Derek White, they would be a different team.
Or that kind of player. I just
Right.
I like Derek White because I see him a lot with the Celtics. He's had big games against the Sixers.
Sure.
He had 2 big games so far. Game 3 last night. Game 2, he played well. I don't remember what he did in game 1. I'll have to go back and look. But I do remember him in game 2. Game 1, I think I was out of the country. That's sorry. But let's see what he did in game he had 15 points, hit 3 threes. I mean, he had a solid, but every game he's giving you 15, 16, 18. He's there for you. He just doesn't not show up. Tobias Harris just doesn't show up some nights. You can't have it.
Right, and that's really where it comes down to. This offseason, if we can go back, Mike, to what Nick Nurse said about the Sixers offseason, I think what Nick Nurse said shines a direct light on this because when you listen to what he described as what they need to do this offseason, like the kind of players they need to add, to me, the player's face next to this description is a Derek White. This was Nick Nurse talking about the Sixers offseason.
Obviously, we've got a lot of cap space, a lot of roster to fill. Tyrese was amazing this year. Joel was playing the best basketball of his career, which is saying something until the injury. So I think we got two great guys to build around, finding the right pieces that are going to be able to space and shoot, defend and rebound, have some IQ, have some late game moxie and guts, and the things that it takes is really the key for us, to get to where we want to go.
He described Derek White. He did not describe a superstar. They don't need another all-star, Mike. They need people like Derek White.
Yeah, listen. this offseason is one that I am, I'm intrigued by. I want to see what they do. I definitely find it interesting to see what way are they going to go. They're going to try to get that third start. We've heard Paul George's name so much, but are they saying, look, that's just not the way to do it anymore. We need those secondary guys. And then, do those guys exist on the market? Are those guys out there that are going to be available, the Derek White type? Is there a Derek? Keith Smith was on yesterday. He put out his top 50 free agents. We could scan that list and find if there's a Derek White type of guy out there. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. So we can scan that. We'll get into that. But I do want to, and somebody just texted this in, Matt Cape May Courthouse. Said, I think DeAnthony Melton was supposed to be the Derek White for us. Problem is, Mike, there's really only one Derek White. You're right about that. I think you're right. DeAnthony Melton was kind of like that Derek White, but DeAnthony Melton was hurt. How much different is this team with a healthy DeAnthony Melton? I think that was an underrated, really smart trade by Daryl Morey when he got DeAnthony Melton. Nobody thought much of it, but he was a tough, defensive-minded player who could score. Not a star, not an all-star. He was in Memphis, so he's like a team-first kind of guy. He's a guy that can handle, defend, pass, shoot, just like Derek White. And he scores like 14 points a game. I think that, Matt, your perception, that's a smart name to have brought up, that the Sixers went out and got DeAnthony Melton. And the injury to Melton has really kind of not been talked about as much. I like that text by Tom in Cape May Courthouse earlier with a Hall of Fame awful text. Matt in Cape May Courthouse picked up the town of Cape May Courthouse and put it on his back.
So would you like me to rattle off some of the free agents on this list from Keith Smith?
This is from his list from yesterday?
Yeah, so he wrote the article. It's the top 50 free agents.
Yeah.
And before I get to some of the names, he broke them in the tiers. So you have the all-star tier, the starter tier, the rotation tier. So there's 3 different tiers. So, for example, I think we would describe Derek White as a starter tier, right?
No doubt.
So here are some of the guys who are currently in the starter tier of the free agent class, according to Keith Smith. So his number 1 in the starter tier is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Meh. I mean, he feels like that guy that just always in the mix. Like his name comes up all the time. He did win a title.
He did with the Nuggets.
Yep.
I think with the Lakers too, didn't he? Did he want the Lakers?
I'd have to check that out.
I mean, I have to look that up. The number 2 guy,
Caldwell Pope is I don't know that he to me, he's a tough one. He's a guy who I think he's a notch below Derek White. Put it that way.
a notch below. You're saying?
Yeah, had a good year this year though. He shot 40% from 3.
By the way, he did win with the Lakers and the Nuggets, so he's got 2 rings.
All right, KCP.
So that should at least get some consideration, right?
I wouldn't hate it, but I don't think he's on the level of Derek White. I think Derek White's a little better, but I mean, I think what that guy's text message said, the problem is there's only one. Like Derek White's like the top of the list of the 4th guy.
Next on
of course, on that team, he's like the 5th guy.
Well, right, exactly. Next on Keith Smith's list is Miles Bridges.
Miles Bridges. Let me see Miles Bridges. He was a guy that I liked coming out of college.
He's had some injuries, off the court issues.
He's been kind of a guy off the court that's had some problems. He plays on a lousy team. Don't love it, but I feel like he's more of like a good scorer on a bad team kind of guy.
Gotcha.
Not a great shooter. Good shooter, not great. I don't know that he's there in the big moments for you. That's all. I mean, he's good player, bad team kind of guy. That's how I look at Miles Bridges. I thought he was going to be better coming out of college.
Next name on the list is Isaiah Hartenstein.
I like him a lot. What he brought, the Sixers don't have. Quinone. I just like Cajones, man. He has them.
Yeah.
Like, the Sixers don't have that guy who has the stones late in the game to go get a board and end this thing. I take Hartenstein, and I'd overpay for him. Not to mention he hits some key shot. He's a restricted guy, I know.
Yeah. Well, actually, according to this, he's a UFA, according to Keith Smith.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so, but I know he's
Who
going
am
to
I
have a big...
thinking of that's restricted?
He's going to have a big market, though.
He will.
So, a lot of guys will be...
Well, I'd go
pursuing
after him, man. And I know, like, the Sixers have Embiid, so... But I guess what I'd have to figure something out. Those Embiid minutes, I'd limit the Embiid minutes and play him, and...
Do you even consider... I mean, I know Embiid is not Karl Anthony Towns, so I understand that, but the Timberwolves did have success with two big men. Is there a way that you could play Embiid and another big man together?
I'd try it, yeah. I mean, the way Embiid's offense is, Hartenstein is a guy, though, the tenacity he brings is something this team lacks.
Yes, absolutely. Next name on the list is Malik Monk.
I like Monk. I think he's a guy that's not afraid of the shot.
Do you think he's better than Buddy Hield?
Because
I feel like they're similar players.
Yeah, but Monk is... I like Monk a little better. And Buddy's probably got better shooting numbers, maybe. I feel like Malik Monk has found a really good role in Sacramento, and I think that's a role that he would be good here. Like a 25-minute game guy, but he's not afraid to take the shot. He's kind of like a little instant offense guy off the bench that could finish games out for you. He's not afraid of the moment, I feel like. Kentucky.
True. Yeah. Next name on the list is Nick Claxton.
Yeah, rebounder. I mean, anybody who's a big man, I'm going to have to, put on the list and that can walk and chew gum. That's better than what you already have, and that includes everybody.
Right.
I mean, Nick Claxton is. I mean, he is a 10 rebound a night kind of guy.
Right.
I mean, and he only does that in, 30 minutes a game. If you cut his minutes down a little bit here because he's playing behind Embiid, not a great scorer.
No,
You're
actually,
not asking him to score.
Well, one of the notes that Keith Smith literally has in the article, he says that, if he was more refined offensively, he would be higher on the list.
Yeah, but I don't hate that name as a backup five. The question is he a backup five? Is somebody going to say, hey, this guy's a starting five? I mean, he's right on the border. He's a double-double guy, though.
He is.
And he blocks shots. I mean,
absolutely.
Time, yeah.
Well, Keith Smith is saying in the article that he is the best defensive big man of all free agents, says Keith Smith in this class. But what's interesting is the name right after Claxton, who's a free agent, Kelly Oubre Jr. That's a very
who just got a new agent.
He did.
Yes, he did. Mike in EHT chimes in. Are you sure Derek White is the same Derek White as with the Sixers? Remember when Horford looked like the kind of guy we need to back up and beat when he was with the Celtics and he came to Philly? Well, yeah, that's different. You're saying that Horford went from the Celtics to the Sixers. I'm not talking about White going from the Celtics to the Sixers. I'm saying if the Sixers got White when he was in Utah, like the Celtics did. Now, I don't know what Derek White would look like post-Celtics here. Some people suggest that Horford just kind of bagged it, mailed it in after, didn't like his role.
Right.
This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning. Broadlee's your trusted source for heating and plumbing service installation for generations. Call them at 390-3907, online at broadlees.net. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live on the X platform. Live video. Use the hashtag SBLive.
It's with Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Former Philly Dave Gallagher tonight, 9-year Major League Baseball veteran. We'll talk some Phils and baseball with him as a 10-game lead, comfortable enough on June 13th. Dave Gallagher tonight on the Sports Bash. This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, and installation for generations. 609-390-3907 or online at broadleys.net. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Don't forget, download the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City and take the Sports Bash wherever you go. It's supposed to be hot this week. Maybe it's on the beach. Or you can watch the show live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. You can comment on the live show. If you open up the video window, you can comment right on the screen here, and we'll get that up on there as well. All right. So, Josh, you're a big fan of the New Heights podcast. I have never heard it.
I listen every week for the last few years.
I don't know why I don't. It's not like I think it's bad or anything. I've never listened to it. It's just not in my rotation.
Which is fine. I mean, I'm sure there's podcasts like you listen to Dave Sampson a lot. That's not really in my rotation.
Yeah, I listen to I not as much as I used to. I feel like stuff's falling out. Like time is an issue.
I would say the podcast that I know is in both of our rotations is Andrew Brandt's podcast.
I listened to that last night. He actually had on a former WNBA player who is now a agent.
Right. I think was it the player that he used to represent?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. That's in my queue after I finish the Kelsey's pod.
Yep. I was listening to that. I was awoken this morning at 1:45 with an immense pain in my big toe.
What are you, John Rahm?
I don't know what happened. It just out of nowhere. I wish I had the answer. But I was like, I was at baseball practice last night, and I was like kind of limping around like, man, my toe is killing me. And then it's bothering me right now. It's subsided a little bit. But at 1:45 in the morning last night, it woke me up, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I finally fell back asleep around 3, but this is when I turned on the Andrew Brandt podcast.
Gotcha. You were like, well, if I'm up, I might as well.
Well, I'm always listening because they help me fall asleep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, on the New Heights podcast, one of the topics came up is that they were talking about how Travis Kelce, Jason likes to poke fun at his brother, and his brother tends to be very humble about his athletic accomplishments. He was poking fun about the fact that Travis recently won a home run derby at a charity event. And he brought up the fact that Travis was actually apparently a very good baseball player when he was younger, to the point where like the University of Cincinnati tried to get him to come play for them at the college level. And then they were talking about his experiences playing baseball. Travis brought up how he was a horrible pitcher, how one time he closed his eyes when throwing a pitch and hit somebody in the head in high school. So they were going through different stories. So for those who don't know, Travis has actually played baseball, football, basketball, hockey throughout his life. Mm-hmm. He's played all the sports all up until college. So Jason asked him the question, who are the worst teammates in any team sport? To which Travis first said, you can't ask me that question. To which Jason said, of course I can. This is the New Heights podcast. But Travis did give an answer.
Wait, so he's essentially saying basketball, football, baseball, hockey. Who has the worst, most selfish teammates?
Yes, who are the most individual? Who are the teammates the type of teammates you dislike the most?
Okay.
Here's Travis Kelce's answer.
From the road that I took, the baseball players for sure. But at the same time, the baseball players. Every other sport was just so much more team oriented. It wasn't just my success on the
100%.
team. The baseball players were very to themselves. I was a guy that I was like, man, I want to be on the team. I don't want to just come to practice. I want to hang out after practice and just be around the guys and have some fun with my teammates. I want to build some chemistry. So when I step on the diamond, I'm having fun with them. And not a lot of guys in the baseball world were doing that.
Oh, that's interesting. My intuition would say basketball. Just more individual, but it's also a smaller team. It's only, 5 if you're playing whatever,
right,
high school or AAU, I guess. It's probably 10 to 12 guys on the team. Baseball, similar. I mean, about 15 guys or so. But I would think basketball, much more individual, get my stats, got to get my numbers, that kind of stuff. Baseball is very similar in that role, but while it's a very team communicative sport, I think that's an underrated part about it, being able to talk. That's one thing in baseball that baseball players don't do, talk. And baseball players look at you what do you mean talk? call the ball, let everybody know it's mine, I got it, all that stuff. I feel like, and I don't know like how old Travis is and what level of baseball he played and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of this is
He played up to high school.
all right. So, but like a lot of this would be
Well, I mean, through high school, I should say.
the baseball players. Yes, it has turned into. I always say to the players that play for me, okay, I don't know about anybody else, but play on my team. So there's a difference in playing on a team and being on a team. When you play on a team, you are playing on a team because I only care about me. I want to know what my velo is. I want to know what my perfect game nobody gives a rat's ass score about is. I want to know what all of these things are. I'm going to play on this team so that I can get those numbers that nobody cares about. If you're being on a team, I'm going to play on a team not for me, but for everybody else. If I'm a shortstop and my team's better because I'm playing third, I'm going to do that. If I'm a shortstop and my team's better because I'm moving to second base, I'll do that. If I'm a shortstop and my team's better if I move to center field, then I'll do that. If you're just playing on a team, you're just playing for yourself and your numbers. When you be a part of a team, you're being a part of a team to win. And there are two different goals that are out there for different organizations. A lot of organizations are created for your numbers. They only care about their numbers. Other organizations are, we want to win. So Travis is right to that extent because the baseball world has been destroyed by the numbers that nobody cares about. The only number that people care about is dollars and cents.
Oh, Travis is 35 years old, to give you a little context.
Okay, so I would say I don't know what level of baseball he played. Did he get like...
He played every year through high school.
Right. I mean, was he just a high school baseball player? Or did he get into the cesspool world?
Well, he played youth baseball, like travel league, when he was younger.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know enough about like where he was and what he did and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, baseball would be very individualized in like. In other words, I'm around the kids a lot, and you'll hear them in the dugout like, "Well, my perfect game number better go up." And I'm thinking, I got news for you. I know the people that work at Perfect Game, and they don't know you, and they don't care. They're just hoping that your parents pay for the membership so you could get your Perfect Game score.
They're hoping the check cashes.
Yeah, like they're just making up a number. Like, do you think they actually know who? Like, I love this. They put the rankings out as if like they really know the difference between a kid in New Jersey versus a kid in Iowa.
Doubt it.
I got news for you. They don't. It's a good business model, though. Just make up a website, make up numbers, throw them on there, and charge people to go look at them. You want to see what your score is? I got the perfect thing for you. We'll just throw it up there. Survey says, you're a 78. And then the kid complains, how do they only get a 78?
It's like when the players complain about the Madden ratings in the NFL, right?
Right, exactly. There's just some guy who basically just, let's put this score together. How's a 87 sound for this guy?
What do you mean I'm an 87?
So he's saying the baseball players are the worst teammates.
Yeah, he's saying that they're the most selfish. Because
now, they could also be, when you get a good team
right,
that likes playing around each other, that changes.
Well, so for example, the Phillies right now, right? They're a team that loves playing together. They have this camaraderie and this kinship, right?
Yeah, that's why my answer seemingly would go to the basketball. Because even on a really good team, an individual player can be the difference.
A huge difference.
Yeah, like you could have LeBron James and his merry men, and that team still could get to a finals.
Right. Like, my thing with LeBron years ago was I wanted, selfishly, I wanted LeBron to be a guy who just vagabonded the rest of his career. I would have loved to see LeBron be like, I'm going to play 1 year here, 1 year here, and just like start elevating franchises left and right.
Yeah. But I find it interesting that Kelsey went down the road and then Jason like piled on.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and the thing is, for those who don't know from the podcast, the Kelseys are huge hockey guys. Like they love playing hockey when they were younger. They love watching hockey. And they they feel like after football, hockey is like the second best team sport.
Hockey, to me, is maybe the best one, even over football, because you could have the best player there and still be. Now, you can I don't know. I guess football, you could. And baseball, too, you could have the best player and still, look at the Angels.
Right.
But hockey's really tough, because the best player, he's only on the ice for so much. He has to sacrifice by sitting on the bench. That's the only sport where the best player is not on the ice as much as he wants to be.
Correct. Yeah, look at the Stanley Cup final right now. The best player on the ice is Connor McDavid, and his team is down 2-0 because guess what? In one play, the puck pinged off the post, and another play, the guy got an empty net goal. So, hockey, you can have, realistically, the Oilers have two of the best players in hockey, him and Draisaitl, on the same team, and they're down 2-0.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Let me check the Phillies lineup real fast. It's usually out by now, but I have not seen it yet, and it is still not out yet. So maybe we'll get that to you on the other side. Is Doc Rivers right? He said something on a podcast. I think he was on with Bill Simmons, the Bill Simmons podcast.
Oh, his best friend.
Is Doc Rivers right? It has a Sixers context, I should say, to it. We'll do that coming up next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
350 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live on the X platform, video at 97.3 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. I'm Mike Gill. So Doc Rivers was on the Bill Simmons podcast and had something interesting to say, as he generally does, regarding his tenure in Philadelphia. He was asked about the game, and he said, quote, "You usually play better at home. The only place that I thought it was difficult to play at home is Philly because of the crowd. I thought it affected our players some." As Derek Bodner from PHLY Sixers points out, the Sixers were 31-4 at home the year before Doc Rivers got to Philadelphia. So does Doc Rivers have a point, or is this just blowbag Doc Rivers?
This is totally Doc Rivers continuing to list his grievances. Like this is like a episode of what was his name from Seinfeld? I
the
got
airing of the grievances.
Yeah, I got a bunch of problems with you people. That's what Doc is doing. I feel like he's always going to eternally have a bunch of problems with Philadelphia.
Well, I think that there's no question that the fans did not care for Doc, and I think towards the end, or even somewhere in the middle, Doc kind of just said, "I'm done with these people too." Yeah, Doc Rivers certainly not a Philly guy.
No, definitely not.
But I will ask the question though: is he off base? Do sometimes the crowd, the Philly crowd, are they their own worst enemy to certain teams? Like for the Phillies, it works great. Their personality is, give it to us. Give us the energy. Let us know. But the Sixers maybe aren't the same.
Well, I think that there's a person-by-person situation.
Absolutely.
You have to get the right people in here who can handle that.
Like anytime something goes wrong for the Sixers, it seems like that crowd turns on them so fast. And they have lost big home games in the playoffs. Game 7 against the Hawks. They lost a game against Boston, Game 6 last year. So they've had some big home games that they haven't been able to get the job done.
But you have had guys also like Jason Kelce and Kyle Schwarber and even Joel Embiid said that we love the fans, how passionate they are, and that if you play hard for them, they'll cheer for you. So maybe you just had the wrong guys in here.
That's no question about that.
And maybe Doc Rivers is himself not the right kind of guy that can handle this environment.
609-403-0973. Doc Rivers saying the Philly is a tough place to play at home, that normally you play better at home unless you're at Philly because the fans turn on you really quickly here. It's kind of one of those takes that you're like, come on, Doc.
It's a really soft take. How much of a wimp are you that you're just like,
I haven't heard that word in a while.
On me.
I haven't heard the word wimp in a while. That's a great pull. Wimp.
Thanks. I was trying not to curse.
Well, I feel like every other word of like wimp proportions has been basically outlawed, but
Right.
the wimp is still something, right?
It still has validity, yes.
Can't the wimp still oh, man, you're a wimp?
Well, the real wimp.
That was a
case
very popular word.
It was for a
When
long
did
time.
wimp go away, and what replaced it? Don't use it if it's not
it's
usable.
a curse word.
But I haven't heard the word wimp. I can't even remember. That was a very prevalent description of somebody who, wasn't tough. They're a wimp.
But that's what Doc is saying. What Doc is saying is that I'm a wimp and my players were wimps. That's what he's saying, basically. We couldn't handle the pressure. We couldn't handle the truth.
609-403-0973. If somebody could do that research, when was wimp the big word? That's what I'm more interested in here. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Coming up, football at 4. Andrew DeCecco is here. Our division previews get underway as everybody's off seasons are pretty much in the books. And now we get ready, the countdown to training camp. When the division previews start with Andrew, the division previews lead us right to Eagles camp. And that's coming up next on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning. Broadlee's your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907, online at broadlees.net. Coming up, Andrew DeCecco from Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com joins us for a look at the AFC East, the 4 teams. Who's the favorite this time around? You might be surprised. Stick around.
Atlantic City. 97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Andrew DeCecco, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
We're never satisfied. That hunger for more. I have it. Everyone has it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Andrew DeCecco is in the house as we get ready for the countdown to training camp. And we're starting that countdown when we start to take a look at our division previews with the great Andrew DeCecco. Now all the offseason is behind us. The mini camps are in the past. We start to take a look at these teams and who they'll be when they get to camp with Andrew DeCecco here on Football at 4. We'll look at the AFC East today. But before we get there, Andrew, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Hey, Mike, doing well. How are you?
All is good, brother. It's good to catch up with you, as always. I do want to get a quick kind of reflection back to minicamp with the Eagles. I didn't get a chance to catch up with you, but just to kind of pick your brain on some of the standouts and some of the things you saw and that are now of interest from what you saw at minicamp as we roll into training camp.
Yeah, these camps are skewed heavily towards the offense and the defensive backs. That's really what it puts a highlight on, because it's really a passing camp. So you're not really able to glean anything in terms of offensive line play or defensive line play. But I will say I came away very impressed with the young defensive backs that the Eagles have. Kelee Ringo, to me, was the standout, followed by Isaiah Rodgers. I thought Isaiah Rodgers breaks on the ball really quick. He has really good short area quickness, good eye discipline. And then Kelee Ringo looks the part of a premier number 2 corner, ready to start. I thought he had some really competitive reps with A.J. Brown. He really executed the match, carry, deliver principles of Vic Fangio to a T, carrying John Ross down the sideline, and another play where he went step for step with Paris Campbell and nearly had an interception. So I think that he really took a big leap forward, at least in the early going into year 2.
I'll ask this follow-up because I think you're right about the whole secondary here. Can they keep them all, or are they going to have to make a decision? Is somebody tradable?
Well, you have to look at the value and who carries that value. I don't think that's Slay's not going anywhere. He's your top corner. He's your veteran. He's here to help teach the young guys and pave the way for them to have future success. He's your top corner. Ringo is not going anywhere. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean obviously aren't going anywhere. So then it becomes who has some value. To me, Isaiah Rodgers has a little bit of value, especially if you're looking to sell high based off of spring practices. I don't know how much stock teams putting into that, but to me, the obvious one would be Eli Ricks, because he is a young player with a lot of pedigree, played a little bit last year. If you're looking to maybe look to add to your wide receiver room, or you're looking to bolster your safety depth, or even maybe a defensive tackle, however you choose to allocate your resources, I think that Eli Ricks has some value as a player that has some upside and still just 22 or 23 years old. So.
All right, the other position, I guess, you got a little perspective on. One guy, Becton. What do you think there? Is he getting the mix for right guard? Is he a guy that gave enough intrigue to them that they want to see him in that competition?
Yeah, Mekhi Becton's absolutely in the mix for right guard. I think seeing him in action at left guard, yeah, you're not able to see a lot of hand-to-hand combat or anything like that, but he looks natural. He looks fluid, moving. Jeff Stoutland seemed to be really enamored with him during the one-on-one individual drills. And I just think that you want to try and get your best five onto the field, whether that's Tyler Steen or Mekhi Becton. I think Mekhi Becton offers immensely more upside than a Tyler Steen. He's also significantly larger. And I think if you look at it in terms of just being able to generate the most power up front, he gives you that. And it all depends on how he's able to transition when the pads come on. And also for Tyler Steen, if he's struggling with power, if he's struggling with, Jalen Carter in one instance put him on his backside for what it's worth. So, there's certain things you want to see, but I think so far, Mekhi Becton's checked off some boxes.
All right, our division previews with Andrew, we go through the summer, takes you right up into training camp. We always have fun doing these to kind of take a look now at all the teams that their off seasons are over. It'll start at the AFC East. Buffalo is your division champion. Looking forward to who you think might win this division. But Buffalo, a big new look there. Josh Allen and a bunch of new receivers. This is a team that lost a lot of players on defense, drafted a wide receiver in the first round here. Are these the same Buffalo Bills?
No, I don't think you can say that. You have Josh Allen, who he's always going to give you a puncher's chance to win games, but the receiving core is a lot. I really like Keon Coleman, the second-round pick out of Florida State, but then you look at Curtis Samuel. He's more of a gadget guy, a 2 or a 3, not really someone who can take over a game. He's also struggled a lot with injuries. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a player who has bounced around quite a bit. He's more of a journeyman. He does have some long speed, but very inconsistent catcher of the football, and not somebody that really moves the needle a lot, in my opinion. So going from Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis to the core that you have right now, I think there's some questions.
Yeah, you also they added Chase Claypool as a guy who kind of got off to a bang. Mac Hollins is there too, by the way. But they lost so much on the defensive side of the ball too. You take a look at the guys, the veterans kind of leaders they had there, the safety spots. This is a completely almost new defense as well. And you mentioned it. They got Josh Allen, but you wonder if he's just going to be enough to carry a new look offense and the changes. And a lot of these were salary cap dumps for them, not guys that they wanted to get rid of.
Yeah, and their running game is going to be paramount to alleviating some of the pressure, obviously, and that's going to be led by James Cook. And then there's the reserve, who I've really liked since his time at Maryland and his early going with the Lions and the Jets, Ty Johnson. But the Bills have never really optimized their running backs in the passing or the running game, and I just don't know. They're a very one-dimensional team, and they put a lot on Josh Allen to play hero ball and things of that nature. So I just don't know if he's going to be able to pull it off with the supporting cast that he currently has. I just don't think that they're good enough. And then defensively, you mentioned it, losing a guy like a Jordan Poyer. Trey White's no longer there, and you're leaning on guys like Ed Oliver, Matt Milano, who's a tremendous linebacker. And they drafted a safety, I believe, in Cole Bishop in the second round, who I really like out of Utah. So there's a lot of new faces there, but there's also some of those mainstays that they're going to have to lean on.
All right, the Miami Dolphins finished 11-6. They were second in the East. They got bombed in the playoffs in the snow. Chop Robinson was their first-round pick, so they go edge rusher there. They go Patrick Paul to help that offensive line, but it's another team that lost a lot, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, but Tua, Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Mostert, this offense is still going to be pretty electric.
Yeah, I really like the Dolphins roster, even in spite of the losses that they had over the offseason. Mike McDaniel, I think, is a really ascending coach, and I thought he did some really good things last season especially. And you look at the receiving core, Jalen Waddle, Odell Beckham. I mean, that's somebody that you don't necessarily want to hang your hat on because he's an unknown entity at this stage of his career as far as his output. And then, of course, you have Tyreek Hill, who is a game-changing type of wide receiver. So I really like their passing situation, especially with Waddle and Hill. And if you're able to get something out of Beckham, well, then all the more power to him. And then the running game situation, Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane. I like Achane. I worry about his ability to hold up for a full slate of games, but he's a home run hitter that's different from I guess you could move him around a little bit more, much like you could Mostert, but he's different in the sense that I just don't know that he's going to be a volume runner, more of a sporadic type of player that I think you insert situationally.
Now, we think their offense is going to be solid again, but defensively, they lost Vic Fangio to the Eagles. The Eagles fans are hoping Fangio is a positive for them. Does losing Fangio mean it's a negative for the Dolphins?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, because I thought that Vic Fangio did some really good coaching in that playoff game when it was freezing temperatures, to say the least, and they were undermanned. Thought he really did a good job at optimizing players and putting them in position to be successful. But I guess there's certain players that you have to wonder, based on the comments that came out of there, how hard they were playing, maybe, or how fully, if they were fully bought into his system. And maybe now they have a new defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver. Maybe now there's a little bit more of a buy-in as he sort of implements his new system. They still have guys like Jalen Ramsey and Javon Holland, who I like a lot. Jordan Poyer comes over from Buffalo, so he's very familiar with the division, of course. And Jordan Brooks, the linebacker, a lot of folks wanted the Eagles to sign him and upgrade their linebackers, but nevertheless, he's with Miami, and David Long's there as well. They have a couple of decent pass rushers in Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, so they still have competent pieces, and I really like what they have on the offensive side of the ball. So they're going to do some good things this year.
Yeah, by the way, Poyer left the Bills. He goes in the division. He's with Miami now, so we'll see. That's a move that helps out Miami. They also have a great name in the secondary, a gentleman by the name of Storm Duck. So keep an eye on Storm Duck for the Dolphins. But that defense will be interesting. They lost Van Ginkel. He had a big year for them last year, but they had Chop Robinson. So that team, I don't know. It feels like if they don't get a home playoff game, anytime Miami has to go on the road in the playoffs, it's just a complete disadvantage for them, especially with what happened to them last year.
Yeah, you're leaving the cozy confines of Hard Rock Stadium, and you're going to the frigid temperatures. It's really a tough task for a lot of for a team that's not necessarily built to. They're built on speed and finesse, and a lot of times when you're going to Buffalo or whatever the case is, and you have to mix it out with some of the teams that are equipped to ground and pound, cold weather, and things like that. Maybe you're not as equipped to do that, but I still think that depending on how things fall, and I don't want to give away who I have winning this division right now, but I think they're going to be okay.
All right, we'll get that in a minute. Let's look at the Jets, 7-10. They also won offensive line in the first round. Ula Foshanu from Penn State. Malachi Corley is the third-round pick, wide receiver. But this is a team that, hey, look, they might have been a playoff team last year had they not had so many quarterback problems. So does Aaron Rodgers get this roster just by adding Rodgers with Bryce Hall, Garrett Wilson, who I like a lot, Mike Williams? Are they good enough offensively now with Rodgers?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the key is going to be keeping him healthy and upright for the full slate of games. But I think that he elevates any offense if he's inserted and he's healthy and he's operating and firing on all cylinders. I mean, the running game that they had, Breece Hall, they drafted Braylon Allen in the fourth round. I like that 1-2 punch. And then offensively, you have Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, and Malachi Corley, who is a player that I talked about extensively during the pre-draft process. I like him in the mold of a Deebo Samuel-esque player, gives that offense a different dimension. I think if Aaron Rodgers is able to get the ball in his hands, he can sort of operate like a Randall Cobb, if you want to kind of draw that comparison to a player he's worked with in the past. So, I mean, I think that's going to be an offense that is going to be – obviously it's going to be a lot more further along in advance than it was last season, but It all comes down to Aaron Rodgers, and if all the wires are aligned.
Well, I will say this: at least they're better equipped with Tyrod Taylor as the backup now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Zach Wilson, I never really held him in much in high regard, but it's definitely an upgrade with Tyrod Taylor there. Someone who's been in a multitude of offenses and a veteran, and you know what you're going to get out of him.
Andrew DeCecco, Football 4 division previews begin this week with the AFC East, which is a fascinating division. This defense was a playoff-level defense last year. They just had such terrible quarterback play, but they add Hassan Reddick, Quinnen Williams, Kinlaw, Jermaine Johnson. They are loaded at linebacker, and obviously Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. This is a defense that you could probably say is a Super Bowl-level defense.
Yeah, and I like their defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich. Some may remember that he was a former linebacker with the San Francisco 49ers and maybe some other teams, but I really remember him as a Niner. So I think you're going to see a tough, hard-nosed defense that flies around. You listed a lot of the personnel. You have Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. DJ Reed's one of the more underrated corners in the NFL, in my opinion. Quinnen Williams is always tough to contend with inside. They're really tough at all three levels of the defense. So I think that they're going to be just fine as long as they're able to stay healthy. They should be able to say that alone should be able to keep them in game.
Yeah, I mean, you almost wonder, like, if Aaron Rodgers, as you kind of said, has the everything plugged in correctly, is this roster a Super Bowl roster?
I think it is. I don't think that's I don't think that's speaking out of something that is without the out of the realm of possibility. I think they can do that. And if Aaron Rodgers is the key here, if he's able to stay healthy and stay fully bought in and everything like that, there's no reason why they shouldn't be viable contenders.
All right, let's go to the basement with New England. Last night was Tom Brady night out there against the Celtics game, by the way, and Tom Brady, I think, outdrew the Celtics. But they got a long way to go. Drake May, possibly the new quarterback there. We'll see. But this is a roster that needs a lot of help. May, will he start? Brissett, let's start with that spot there, and then we can kind of look at the rest of this offense, which is not very impressive.
Yeah, I think, in my estimation anyway, I would think that Jacoby Brissett is going to be the starter in the early slate of the games, and then probably turn the reins over to Drake May. It's always a tough task for a young quarterback to jump right in when or be thrown to the fire and expect to execute the offense at a high level. So I think that should also be taken into account. All that being said, I personally like Drake May coming out, but he's sort of a polarizing type of quarterback. He wasn't a fit for everybody, and you don't know how he's ultimately going to acclimate. But Jacoby Brissett, for the longest time, he was the top backup in the league. He's a veteran. He's played in a million different offenses. I think you know what you have in him, and you can confidently roll him out there for the first few weeks while Drake May sort of gets his sea legs under him.
Yeah, the problem with, if you're May and you're coming in, you don't have great weapons to work with here either, and your offensive line is suspect.
Yeah, I mean, look, a receiver, they have a lot of work to do. Jalen Polk, who I like out of Washington, was drafted in the second round. Kendrick Bourne is really just he's really a 4, and he's being asked to be a 2 there. Their tight ends, they have 2 veterans in Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, so I think that's going to be extremely beneficial for a young quarterback like Drake May operating over the middle of the field. You have those veterans, they can be your safety valve. But and their running game, they're really going to have to lean on Ramondre Stevenson, who is a power running back, and I think that when you look at what their lack of offensive weaponry, they're going to have to really take to the ground. But I don't know how effective Ramondre is going to be, knowing that teams are going to be keying in on the run. So I really just don't see a way where any quarterback or any player that you plug in there is going to have success given the personnel at their disposal.
All right, on that defensive side of the ball, which obviously you got a defensive-minded head coach now. Not that you didn't before, but, obviously you still have defensive-minded head coach. But do they have a lot to work with? This was kind of an underrated defense. The offense just kind of doesn't help them out a lot, but it doesn't feel like those underrated Patriot defense during the Brady era.
Right, yeah. I'll give you 5 players that I really like on their defense. And, Christian Barmore on the defensive line, Matthew Judon, the edge rusher. And then on the back end, I like Kyle Duggar, Christian Gonzalez, who was their first-round pick a year ago, and Marcus Jones as their inside corner, who's a really good return specialist as well. They have some pieces there. I just don't know if they have enough to really be able to kind of keep pace with some of these high-flying offenses that I think that their division has.
Feels like there's some talent there, but right, like you said, they got a couple players, but this team just doesn't feel very exciting right now. It should be an interesting race, though. Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, and then I would imagine the Patriots. How do you see it, though, for the AFC East?
Dolphins, Jets, Bills, Patriots.
Dolphins, Jets, Bills, Pats. All right. That's going to be interesting. Do they get 3 playoff teams or 2? We'll see as the season gets on. Our AFC East look, our division previews begin, and that counts us down to the start of Eagles training camp, which will be here before we know it. And, of course, Andrew, all summer long with the division previews here on the Sports Bash. Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew, thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, there he goes. Andrew DeCecco, everybody, from Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And, of course, their YouTube channel to get the Football at 4 interviews and more content. Just search Inside the Birds. I've got the Phillies lineup. It is hot off the press. It's brought to you by our friends at Clark's Moving and Storage. Of course, check out my guys over at Clark's Moving and Storage, Rio Grande. Here we go. Phil's lineup tonight. It's a little quirky lineup tonight. Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Stott, Sosa, Dahl, Merrifield, Stubbs, Rojas for Aaron Old tonight. Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Stott in the 4-hole tonight. Sosa, Dahl, Merrifield's playing third with no Bohm. Stubbs is catching. Rojas in center. Yeesh. Doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot of offense tonight. They'll go out and score 8 runs.
It's the Michael Keaton lineup, Mike. You know, Rob Thompson said, "You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts."
Yeah. I probably would have gone, nah, can't do that again.
Well, they're giving Bohm a day off.
Yeah, but I would have said I would have put maybe Sosa, Merrifield in the 2-hole and get Castellanos out of there and at least put Castellanos in. Now, you know he had 2 hits last night.
Well, maybe you put Castellanos in the 4.
I'll say he could have hit 4 tonight. You could have put Sosa or Merrifield
at
2. And then Stott doesn't. We had Stott hitting in the 4-hole. And then that puts 2 lefties together.
Feels unfair.
Yeah, it's not a great lineup tonight.
It's the Michael Keaton lineup, Mike. Just call it that. We're going to get nuts tonight.
Yeah. I got you. Michael Keaton, Batman.
That's right.
Is he your favorite Batman?
I think he was the best of the Batman actor, yes.
Where's Val Kilmer on that list?
Val's problem is that he was a very good actor in a very horribly written movie.
Yeah.
So he's a lower on the list because he wasn't given the great hand to work with.
All right, more Sports Bash coming up. Knicks Nuggets are next here on the Sports Bash.
We have the for sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
4:28 on a Thursday. Happy Hour Friday tomorrow. Looking forward to that. It's should be a fun version. Josh said he has a Happy Hour Friday pick for me. Now, I spent Happy Hour Friday in London last week, and I could come back with a plethora of Happy Hour Friday picks for you. But I don't know that many of them are over here.
Well, mine, I got a picture of the can for you as well.
Good. You need the can. Always got to put a picture.
The can is actually a very important part of this Happy Hour Friday pick.
Like it. Nick Earnshaw's here with Knicks Nuggets. They're brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. Bet365. Nick Earnshaw is in the house here on a Sports Bash Thursday with another edition of Knicks Nuggets. What's going on, Nick?
What's up, Mike? So last week you were in London for Happy Hour Friday. This week I'll be in Baltimore for Happy Hour Friday.
I like it.
For the Baltimore Phillies game tomorrow. That'll be fun.
So you'll be Camden Yards. I hear all 3 games are sold out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be nuts tomorrow. It's
It'll
going to
be an atmosphere down there. Good pitching matchups, too. You got Wheeler and Corbin Burns, one of the games.
Yes, I think tomorrow it's going to be Ranger and Bradish. Tomorrow that's the lineup. And then Rodriguez and Walker on Saturday and Wheeler and Burns on Sunday.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be a fun series for sure. All right. Nugget number one, question of the day kind of went towards the Atlanta Braves, the team trailing the Philadelphia Phillies in the NL East right now. They are 10 games back, or they might be 9 now or 9.5 because they did win today against the Baltimore Orioles, who the Phillies are playing up next tomorrow. But the Braves, they've been struggling since May. They're 17-20. They've lost 5 straight for the first time since 2017 based upon yesterday's game. They're a team that has injuries piling up. Ronald Acuna's out. Their pitching staff, they lose Spencer Strider early on in the year. Their offense ranks near the bottom since May 1st, Mike. Are the Braves really a threat at this point anymore? I mean, maybe if they go out and make a trade, get a big name, they can get back into the swing of things. But really, this is the Phillies division to lose right now, Mike.
I agree with that, but it's not for the reason that most people would come up with. I don't think the Braves care about winning the division. I don't think they have cared about winning the division the entire season. They have lost as the division champions. They've complained about the playoff setup. So I think they say, Phillies, have a blast and see what it's like playing from the top this time around. So I think the Braves are playing a little slow play here. You know, they'll make their move maybe sometime at the deadline, but they're going to know, much like the Phillies, we're not within striking distance of you, but they're going to make the playoffs as a wild card team. I think that's pretty secure for them. And I think they want to play as the team coming from the wild card this time around.
They want to be. So you're suggesting that they're just kind of take it easy here early on in the season. April, May, June, July, we get closer to the All-Star break. After the All-Star break, trade deadline, that's when they start picking it up a little bit. They get in. They don't win the division, but they get in as a wild card team. They want to be the hot team going in. Is that what you're saying? Like the Phillies have been because of what happened over the past couple of years.
They want to take the Phillies formula. They want to be the team that gets in with like 89 wins. And, hey, house money for us. Phillies, you play with the pressure this time. You play with taking the break for a couple of days and see how that works out for you. I think the Braves look at that and say, hey, listen, we've had some injuries. We're 10 games out or 9.5 games out. That's cool. That's fine. We'll play with the wild card. They have the wild card lead right now. They're the top team in the wild card, much like the Phillies were last year. And I think the Braves are quite okay with that.
Yeah, the offense has struggled since the beginning of May. So that's been interesting to watch, to see the offense not be really good. The batting average is down towards the bottom of the league since the beginning of May. But I'm concerned about their pitching. Is Chris Sale going to be a guy that's really going to be able to lead this team into the playoffs? I don't think that they have enough pitching in a series against the Phillies. Like, if the Phillies win the division, right? They go in, your first 2 games are at Citizens Bank Park. It's not in Atlanta now. Now, I know Atlanta struggled, and, they split with the Phillies when, they had the days off when they won the division 6 times in a row, and in the past 2 seasons when they played the Phils. But I think for the Phillies, I think it's a win if they win the division. They get a couple of days off. I know in the past they've been hot because of the wild card, but they'll be at home. That's the difference here.
I didn't say that I thought it was a formula for the Braves to win. I'm just saying that it's a formula for the Braves to do something different than they've been doing, which is win 100 games plus, win the division by 14 games, and then get beat in the playoffs. This is a different route for them, and I think they're saying, hey, Phillies, you go out and win 100 games, see what that's like, and they'll see if they can do something different. Look, they won the World Series without Ronald Acuna Jr. They didn't have their 100-plus win season that year. They were just a team kind of wrestling their way in. They got in, got hot, and won a World Series.
Yeah, I just think this year it's the pitching that's going to hurt them in the playoffs. I don't think that stacks up against the Phillies. We've seen how good the Phillies pitching has been. They've been there, done that. They're top 3 against the Phillies top 3. I think I'd like the chances for the Phillies.
There's no argument there. I'm not saying that them going this route is a recipe for finally winning. I'm just saying that, to me, you asked, are they done in the division? I don't think they care about the division. So, yeah, I don't think they're a threat because, quite frankly, I don't think they really are all that interested in the division.
Yeah, it just seems like this. So it would be their 7th, I think, in a row this year. If the Braves were to win the division, it would have been their 7th division title in a row. Remember when the Phillies won 5 in a row back from 07 to 11? That was kind of the run the Braves have been on. Now it might switch up a little bit. Now you have the Phillies with that big lead. We'll see how it shakes out because I think the Braves will be probably one of those wild card teams. They just have to stay healthy and continue to win games. They've been struggling a little bit here in the month of May and heading into June now. I think they're a team that you have to still watch, but I don't think they're up with the upper echelon with the Phillies, with the Dodgers. But yeah, it just seems like, we'll get it as a wild card. There's 3 spots. We'll get it. We're good enough to still get in, even without Strider, Acuna, and our top players. They'll still be able to get in. I don't think they make any noise.
Keep in mind, the Phillies were battling for a wild card spot.
Yeah.
At this point last year, I'm not even sure they were in the wild card top 3 spots. They were kind of struggling along. The Braves are at least over 500, and the top wild card team, I think they're 3.5 up on the 4th team.
Yeah, I think so. So it's just something to watch because the Braves aren't as scary as they have been in the past, especially in the regular season. They've been a regular season force over the past couple of years since they won that World Series. Not the case this year. Doesn't really worry me. Playoffs don't really worry me either. So they can say, yeah, sayonara to the division. We'll get as a playoff team. Even when they get in, they don't really worry me because of their pitching.
One more thing. Things change. I mean, it's not just a rite of passage that the Phillies are going to play the Braves every single year. This year, you might have to beat somebody else to get to where you're going. You beat the Braves the last 2 years, but that doesn't mean you'll actually meet up with them in these playoffs.
Right, and this is assuming they can get out of that first wild card round, too. Like, if they're playing in that first wild card series, that's assuming they get out of that, and then they find a way out of that, and then you're playing, you're pitching again. Their pitching staff is now towards the bottom of the lineup. You're playing them in the DS series, too. So it would be their back-end starters against the Phillies' top starters. It's just, I don't think it shakes out well. Unless they make a move at the deadline, then we'll see. A lot can happen from now until September, heading into October. But right now, Braves aren't a team that worries me as much as a team like the Dodgers heading into the postseason.
Yeah, by the way, the Braves, who did you say won today, right?
Yeah, they would be at 6-3 against the Orioles, I believe.
Right, 9.5 out already. 9.5 out as we are not even at the All-Star break. It's the biggest division gap in all of baseball.
Wow, how about that? That's how good the Phillies have been. Even after last night's loss, it's okay. Everything will be all right. I want to switch gears. You guys started talking about this in the last hour, I believe. Doc Rivers. Now, he was on the Bill Simmons podcast, Mike, and he starts discussing. He makes another excuse, to say the least, for his time with the Sixers. You know, he's made excuses now with the Milwaukee Bucks. He talked about that he didn't really he didn't like playing at home. He thought it affected the players. Mike, what do you make of these comments from the Bill Simmons podcast that Doc had?
We were talking about this in the last hour. Josh brought up a great word, a wimp. I haven't heard the word wimp in a long time, but just a wimp mentality. Like, Mr. Softy here. Like, I get it. Like, the Phillies fans, I do think some teams don't have the mental makeup to handle their own crowd turning on them. But guess who that comes from? The coach. The coach sets the culture. The coach sets the mentality of the team. And this is what I talk about in basketball all the time. It's not as about the coach with the X and O's. It's the culture and the mentality that he sets that will ultimately win. I don't think anybody thinks Joe Mazzulla is a tactician master, although he's getting a lot better in that realm. But he is a stone cold killer. Mazzulla is almost like you almost wonder if he's like a mass murderer. The way he just looks through you. Look,
no emotion,
nothing, and he answers questions like just in the same. I mean, he is a scary dude, Mazzulla. Shout out WVU, by the way, for Joe Mazzulla. But Doc Rivers allows that mentality. Derek Bodner tweeted it out.
Yeah.
The year before Doc got there, the Sixers were 31-4 at home. I'm not saying
they won like 29 games in his last year, the year before he got fired.
I mean, it's just a terrible look for him, and he doesn't care. But it's a terrible look for him, and I think the word wimp that Josh brought up is a word that needs to be brought back into the lexicon.
Yes, I'm with you. He definitely is a whip. Now, I want to ask you this because there's another Doc Rivers story kind of floating around out there. There's going to be a new series on Hulu called Clipped about the Clippers, etc. And they have an actor, Lawrence Fishburne. He's going to be playing Doc Rivers, and he was asked about what he made of meeting Doc Rivers. He had no idea who Doc Rivers was. He said this in an interview with Dan Patrick before the movie. He's not a sports fan. He had no idea who Doc was before he met him, before he knew he was going to play the character for the role. Mike, that had to be a shot to his ego. I mean, he's a total wimp. I mean, that was probably a total shot and probably hurt the man because Lawrence Fishburne's a big actor.
Yeah, I listen, that comment there made me crack up. They asked him about him. He said, who's Doc Rivers? So the fact, now, was this, he didn't know who Doc Rivers was when he got the role?
Yeah, he's not a sports fan. That was kind of the claim. Hey, he's not a big sports fan. He doesn't watch sports. So he had no idea who Doc was going into the role. Like, he had to ask Doc about him and learn who he was heading into it. So he had no prior knowledge as to who Doc Rivers was, what he was all about, etc.
But he did the research, though. Is that what you're saying? So he did the research. Okay. Yes. Well, at least he didn't just blindly say, like, I don't even know who I was playing and I didn't even care. At least he did the research.
No, he did the research, but going into it, he had no idea who Doc Rivers was. And Doc Rivers is a pretty big name in the basketball world and in the United States in general.
Yeah, people should know who Doc Rivers is. But if you're not a sports fan, look, I found this out in London. They didn't give two bleeps about baseball over there, okay? They didn't know anything about it and didn't care that this game was there.
Well, that's why they're trying to grow it. Yeah,
they're trying to grow it. I get it.
That's exactly why.
But my point is, if you are so disconnected from that, then you don't know who they are. But they don't know who the Phillies are. Never heard of them. I don't know who Doc Rivers is. Not a sports fan.
Yeah, that's kind of the same idea here. Like Fishburne had no clue going into it. Like, he's going in as an actor, not having a clue who Doc was until he started doing the research. He met him, figured out, I guess, the character he wanted, Doc to be in this film about the Clippers. And I think, the whole Donald Sterling thing, et cetera. I think that's what this whole thing's about. So, yeah, it was fascinating. But I'm sure that when he saw that, he had to hurt his little ego. A little bit. I mean, he's an excuse maker. What excuse did he come up with there for Lawrence Fishburne not know who he was? I mean, he could think of anything.
I'm imagining he. Did he get asked about this?
No, I don't think Doc was asked about it, but I'm sure he would come up with some type of excuse.
Gotcha. All right.
All right. Moving to nugget number 3, and with the NBA Finals going on, this is unbelievable. So as a Sixers fan, you got to be hurt by this, right? Like, Jaden Springer and Al Horford, 2 former Sixers, are most likely going to win a ring. They're 1 game away from winning the title. They've won 3 in a row. But if in the beginning of the season you told me Jaden Springer would have a ring, not with the Sixers by the end of the year, and it was with the Boston Celtics, I would have called you crazy, Mike. Doesn't that just irk you to no belief?
The Springer thing doesn't. I mean, he was a nothing, right? Although he was part of the Bridges trade. No, that was the other guy. I can't think of his name. that was
I'm blanking too.
No, man, what the heck was that guy's name who had the peanut allergy?
Yeah, because I covered him.
Yeah, but Springer got traded. It was like a bizarre trade too. Like, why? Like, what? But the Horford thing. The whole Horford, like what he did here was so perplexing, and what he's doing for the Celtics. Like, he's playing 30-plus minutes for them with Porzingis out, and he's been somewhat productive. And you're thinking to yourself, where was this guy? And some people think that he, basically tried to, sabotage the Sixers. And at the time, it felt like the Sixers were saying, hey, they went and got a guy who's been a thorn in their side, so now let's grab him. That whole Horford to the Sixers era, you gotta. And then Morey got him out of there and traded him out, and people
he was getting benched in Oklahoma City like that. Like, we thought his career was probably over. He goes back to ball. It was Zaire Smith, by the way.
Zaire Smith
was the name. I couldn't think of it either for a second, but yeah, it was Zaire Smith. But Al Horford goes to Oklahoma City, struggles there mightily, gets literally benched. You think, all right, this is probably coming towards the end for Al Horford. He goes back to Boston, resurrects himself again, and it's like that is the place for him, and he's going to win a ring. It's crazy.
There was a scene. It was last night late in the game. I think Derek White, who's been awesome, hit the 2 free throws. They show Al Horford, kind of sealed the game, and you're thinking, Horford's going to get one. You know, he was on those Hawks teams that won 60-plus games. They were the number 1 seed. They kept losing to LeBron, and you felt this guy's never going to get one. Well, here he is. He's going to get one.
Yeah, he's definitely.
By the way, you didn't mention Drew Holiday as a former Sixer in there.
Yeah, Drew Holiday, another one. Yeah, beginning it was like kind of towards the end. But I think the Horford thing hurts a little bit more than the Drew Holiday thing, because Drew Holiday won with Milwaukee already. It hurts a little bit with him winning in Boston, but the Horford, the Springer thing, it's madness. It's utter madness to see these former Sixers. And then Tatum, that whole debacle with the Colangelo burner accounts, making the trade for Fultz. It's like, I mean, come on. What are we doing here, Mike?
I didn't think you were going to hammer me over the head with that one, too.
Yeah, I had to bring that one up, too. Because
I will say,
the Sixers draft pick.
Marcus Hayes tweeted this out earlier today, to which I did have to get in to the conversation. He said, Drew Holiday was the first casualty of the Sixers process. He was a 22-year-old two-way point guard. He got traded for Nerlens Noel and a pick. In a few weeks, he'll be a 2-time NBA champion and a 2-time gold medalist. Meanwhile, none of the pieces of the process has won anything. So all of what he said is accurate. But context is king here, right?
Yeah.
The Sixers, if they would have kept Drew Holiday is Drew Holiday because he's the glue guy that pulls the 2 stars together and gets the most out of them. The problem with Drew Holiday here was he didn't have the 2 stars around him. He was the star.
Yes.
And that wasn't good enough. And the Sixers said, look, he's a really good player, which is why they traded him, because they got great value back in return.
Right, exactly. I mean, that was the start of blowing everything up and turning to the process. Like, that's why they got rid of Drew Holiday, and he was really young at that point. He's a great glue guy. Like, he's a guy that you would have as a third option next to a Maxey and Embiid. Like, he'd be a perfect fit for that type of role, right? And that's what he's kind of doing in Boston. And you even had Joel Embiid tweet out last night, did the Bucks give them the championship? Meaning, did the Bucks hand over Drew Holiday basically for nothing, handed Boston a championship?
Yep, absolutely. And Drew Holiday has been the glue for Antetokounmpo and Middleton. He pulled them together. He's been the glue for Tatum and Brown. He pulls them together. He would not have been that glue for Iguodala and Evan Turner.
I think the Sixers, clearly, they need a glue guy. That's what they need. Tobias Harris.
Well, we talked about this in the 3 o'clock hour. Like, the Sixers have constantly lacked the Derek White player.
Yep.
Like, that guy who can get you 15, but he's not the star of the team, but he can still find a way. The moment's not too big for him, even though he's not the best player out there.
That was the hope, I guess, Toby, right? Toby would be, and he just really wasn't.
Well, that's what I said. Your version of Derek White, kind of like the non-all-star, but like the third, fourth player, has been a Busteroni. Tobias Harris, like Kelly Oubre. Like, Kelly Oubre could be the White. Unfortunately, Oubre came up kind of small in some of the playoff games this year.
Yeah, he did. I think he would be a nice 4. Like, I don't know if I want Kelly Oubre to be the 3, the Drew Holiday. Nice Derek White player. If you could have someone a little bit above Kelly Oubre's talent, I think that would work.
Somebody texted in and said, what about DeAnthony Melton? Was he supposed to be the Sixers' Derek White, and then he's just constantly been hurt?
Yeah, I guess to an extent, right? Like, he can hit the 3, play some defense, and he's young. And Melton was young. So I wonder what happens with Melton this offseason, because
free agent,
he's a free agent, and he's been hurt, but he's young and has the upside there. I wonder if they bring him back. I'm curious to see if they do. I don't know.
He's one of them guys I'm interested in. Oubre would be a guy. Batum's a guy that I'm interested to see. This offseason's going to be a blast.
Yeah, and it's going to get started quicker than we thought, because
the NBA offseason. The NBA offseason is like the WNBA to the college girls. Like, Caitlin Clark plays in the championship on the 6th. She's playing for the Fever like a day later.
Yeah, yep, exactly. That's the NBA offseason once the finals end. It's going to be fascinating. All right, Mike, 3 Nuggets for you today. Wrapping it up. I'll be in Baltimore. I'll try and call in tomorrow for the Nuggets.
All right, so Nuggets tomorrow live from Baltimore. Nikki Earnshaw, and, of course, right here on the Sports Bets, new episode of The Shift.
Yep, coming out tomorrow. We're going to record probably in the parking lot by our car, Mike. That's probably what we're going to do. Oh, yeah, we're bringing it on the road.
All right, so real quick, we got about a minute or so here. Frank Close is going to Baltimore, right?
Yeah. I've been in contact with
So
Frank.
He's hooking up with you? So
yeah,
I am supposed to go to Baltimore on Saturday.
Oh, you're going
You
to
won't
Saturday.
be there, though.
No, I won't be there on the Saturday.
You're only
game.
going to Friday.
Billy. What's that?
You'll be with Billy. That's right.
Yeah, I'll be with Billy on Saturday in the studio, and then on Friday I'll be in Baltimore.
Are you leaving? Are you staying overnight Friday, or are you coming back after the game Friday night?
I'm making the trip back. I'm making the trip back.
Gotcha. All right. Well, then
So I'll be up. I'll have a couple hours of sleep.
Then
I'll
my
be fine.
plan is now foiled. All right.
What was your plan?
Well, I was thinking about driving after the show Friday to Baltimore, and then meeting up with you guys after the game at Max's Tap House.
Oh, well, see, that could work out. I'm not driving. I'm not the driver heading down there.
All right. Well, it depends on how well you get up in the morning, I guess.
Yeah, I have had quick turnarounds. Trust me.
All right. Well, you're a young man, Earnshaw. You're a young man.
I have some quick turnarounds
Good
for
stuff.
sure.
Well, I got to figure out if I'm going to go Friday night after the show, or just drive down with the Philly Sports Trips guys, because they're driving down Saturday and then coming right back. The Saturday game is a 4:00 in the afternoon game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You could come back, do Billy's show, get in the car, and go back for Saturday.
Maybe I'll go to the second game.
There you
It's sold
go.
out, right? Yeah,
You could be my +1.
All right. How about that? We'll try and make it work. How about that?
All right, brother. See you later.
All right, Mike.
Nick Earnshaw. Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. They're brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'm Mike Gill, and of course, coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, we told you Dave Gallagher, 9-year MLB veteran, will join us. We'll get his take on this Phillies team. They're so far out ahead. Does he like being this far out ahead? And what are some of the questions he might still have about this team? You heard from 9-year Major League Baseball veteran Dave Gallagher in 9 minutes on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive.
Jersey. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. Dave Gallagher played 9 years in the majors, including 1 year with the Phillies. He's a local guy. He watches these Phillies all the time. We always love getting his perspective. Former hitting coach as well. Team's got a couple questions. They are 9.5 games up in the division. It is June 13th. There's certainly no panic button here, Dave, but what do you think about a team 9.5 up in the middle of the summer? Do you like playing that far ahead in the standings at this stage of the season?
Well, I wasn't thinking about responding with this, but I actually played on a team you may remember, a lot of fans may remember, one of the biggest collapses of all time. I was with the Angels. I got traded to the Angels in, I think it was August 9th, and they had a 13-game lead on August 9th and lost it. A total collapse. And I remember Marcel Latchman, who was managing, he said to me, look, not that we have it sewn up. You never want to say that. So he was superstitious. But he said, I'd like to, start resting guys in the outfield. That outfield was a good outfield. It was Tim Salmon, what's his name, Jim Edmonds, and Garrett Anderson. So he was resting guys and lost. We actually fell 4 games back to Seattle with 4 games to play. They lost their last 4, and we won our last 4 for a 1-game playoff, which we lost. So I don't want everybody thinking about that, but it happened. It would take a major collapse for the Phillies to lose this lead because of their pitching. Right? That's the.
Let's bring that thing up though real quick, Dave. Is how tough is it to manage a team when you're so far out in front? You're trying to get guys some at bats, and you want to keep everybody, but then hey, you look at it as an opportunity to not like run guys into the ground. It's almost harder to manage a team when you're that far out ahead.
Well, there's certain things you can do, and I think Topper's doing it. He really is. I've been watching like the last few weeks. Nobody would ever admit publicly, "Hey, we got this thing." No way. It's too much left in the season, but you wouldn't want to do that to yourself anyway. You want to keep playing, but it has allowed him to and the staff to try to figure out all of those little nuances of the game that they're going to want to win a World Series. So not just get there. We've had that talk, you and I, that they're beyond that. They don't want to just get there. They want to win it.
Yeah.
And they can. With that pitching, they can. So I'm watching these moves that he's making, starting different lineups, putting guys in different positions, who goes in for defense, who pinch runs, who pinch hits, and he's trying to figure it out. You know, now all of a sudden David Dahl threw his name into the hat with a couple of bombs from the left side of the plate. Is he a guy that can extend your roster and be, an experienced bat? He's played in big games. If I'm not mistaken, he made an all-star team.
Yeah, 2019.
So, I mean, that's pressure. It's good pressure, but it's pressure. It's, playing with and against the best players in the game. So he's had those moments. I don't think he would overreact one way or another. So if he can be productive, what a great addition. I can't stand the fact that it's not working out for Whit Merrifield. And I never met the guy, but he just seems like such a hard-working professional. But it's just not happening. And he's had plenty of at-bats, and maybe he could turn it around. I believe that the Phillies want him to turn it around. I think they want him to be a part of that team. But defense is mediocre, right? I don't think his defense is above average at any position. So he's got to hit. And he can. He showed his whole career he can. He can steal bases. Just hasn't done it this year. So, that's what I think they're trying to figure out now. Not so much the starters. I think they've ironed that out. When the injured guys come back, hopefully they're on a roll. But I think they're trying to figure out the role players. Who do we keep? Who do we, who best fits our team? That's the luxury of having a huge elite.
Yeah, and I agree. I talked about this in the first hour of the show, Dave, is the Merrifield thing to me. I don't know, have they given him enough of a shot, consistent at bats? Has that been a problem, or has he just not been productive? But to me, I was hoping for more. He seemed like a guy that they brought in because he gave them something different. A guy who doesn't strike out, a guy who puts the ball in play. He's got speed. He's an on-base guy. And that's something that they lacked. And I don't know, are they just not using him the right way, or do you think that they've given him enough opportunity and he just hasn't taken advantage of it?
Well, if there's anything that I learned in all the years I played, minor league and major league baseball, that it's not fair. There's nothing fair about it, and you can't go in expecting it to be fair. You can't say, well, I only had 5 at-bats, and they were all against teams' closers, and they sent me down. It is what it is. It's a performance-based industry. It will never be fair. If that's how you look at things as the athlete, it's not going to work. You just have to prepare yourself. Again, I don't know him, but my gut tells me this guy prepares, certainly puts in the effort. He works hard. And I go on record. I went on record saying I thought that was a great signing. I did think that it was a piece that they were missing, somebody that gave tough at-bats. They have enough guys that are, all or nothing. And then they have like a Bohm. We've talked about him enough, and Stott, whose approach is, they make for long at-bats and tough at-bats, tough out. And I had Merrifield in that category. He hasn't been that yet. And I don't know if he'll be given the time. Is the luxury to give him another couple of months on the roster, or do they make a move? I don't know. I'm pulling for him. I do think he'd help that team down the stretch.
Yeah. And especially, Dave, especially, Dave, with all the injuries they've had, that kind of would open the door for him to have a bigger role. But it almost feels at this point they look at him as a platoon guy at best. Like, you figure Turner gets out, okay, play Stott at short. Merrifield play some second base for an extended period of time. That didn't happen. Now Marsh is out. Hey, go play left field for an extended period of time. That didn't happen. So it almost feels like they have now come to terms with he isn't the guy that we thought we were getting.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like I said, I get these feelings for certain guys, the way they go about their craft, and he's one of them from afar. But I would never hold it against the Phillies to make a move along those lines because he has been given those opportunities. I think he would say he's been given the opportunities. And he looks, sometimes I watch him after he grounds out or pops up and the camera goes to his face and he's trying to hide the frustration. He's trying to hide the fact that he's lost his edge and his confidence for now. And you got to fight through that. I unfortunately had to do that a lot, but that's part of the game. But you mentioned the injuries. It's amazing to me with Marsh out, Turner out, now Real Muto out, how strong that pitching staff has been able to be the foundation, the glue to keep this thing together. They're just lights out. One bad start now and again, but mostly it's consistent, great starts. You almost don't recognize the injuries.
Yeah, last night was one of the nights where they didn't get a great start from Christopher Sanchez, and they had to go to the bullpen, and Ruiz, who's been good this year, and he didn't have it. Turnbull was not very good. I want to get your thoughts on the Turnbull thing. What do you do with him? He was excelling as a starter. The obvious situation there. How does a guy get, what do you do with it in that situation? I don't know if you've ever had that situation with a teammate where he's a starter, he was pitching well, and then an injury kind of forced him out of the role, and now he's just kind of living in no man's land.
Yeah, your mind as an athlete at that level, your mind is so important. Some guys are better than others to perform through, shattered confidence. But I do know this. When you're doing well, whether that's a pitcher, it's a position player, hitting, even stealing bases, when you're on top of your game and your confidence is high, that's when you're performing at your best. Turnbull was probably in the best streak of his career. And I remember when it was about to happen, when Walker was about to be activated, and it was probably on your show, a lot of people were talking about, what do you do? Do you put Walker in the pen? And then there's that business side of the game that rears its ugly head. But I remember thinking, you got to ride this guy. Ride him. And if he has a couple of bad starts in a row, then put him in the pen. I'm not saying anybody was wrong with the decision they made, but it doesn't surprise me that the effect of what we're seeing now is probably more like what Turnbull was in his past career. Totally unfair to think the guy's going to have command after sitting as long and pitching as inconsistent as he has. And he probably wouldn't use that as an excuse, so I am. But yeah, I mean, those are decisions that get made that could win or lose you, a league championship or even a World Series. He was hot.
Yeah. Speaking of a guy who was hot, we both like Bohm, but there's no question he has really cooled off since the first month of the season. Do you see any problems there? I mean, this is a pretty prolonged slump. He was scorching hot. He's under, I think he's in the 280s now. The on-base percentage dipping. Is something going on with Alec Bohm?
Yeah, that's the ups and downs of the season. I think we all knew he wasn't going to hit 360, but I do think he'll drive in 90 to 100. I do. He'll get his RBIs. He looks like he's a little off, but I can think of my best seasons. A couple times I hit over 300, but in those seasons there was always a span of at-bats where I lost my feel. Like, what is it? I had this weird rhythm thing where I roll my hands, trying to stay loose and rhythmic. When I was struggling, my hands would get very still, like I was hitting from a still position. That's terrible. And I didn't see them because those hands are behind my head. And I remember Harold Beans telling me, he didn't say much. He really didn't say much, but he kind of mumbled to me one time, "Why'd you move your hands?" And I said, "Are you talking to me?" He said, "Yeah, what did you say? He said, why aren't you moving your hand? I said, I'm not. He goes, no, you're doing this, and you used to do this. And I hit him on the shoulder, like, why didn't you tell me sooner? But funny, because that happened to me. Like, you lose it, you lose your feel. When everything is going good, you're not thinking about that. You know, you spit on pitches that are 3 inches off the plate because you see him so well. But he'll get it back. He'll get it back because he'll keep applying the same approach that he does at the plate, and he'll find it. But look at Bryce. See, I think that's the offense has been able to float who's hot at the right time. It's been a mix. And when you and I talked last, we were saying, like, when Bryce gets hot, he does a ton of damage. When Bohm gets hot, he's consistently driving in runs, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Bryce
just does more damage, more home runs, you know, and he loves the moment. Bryce loves the moment. Castellanos is starting to come on a little bit. Where the Phillies could use that.
No doubt.
Instead, you know, they probably were close to saying, what do we do here? Do we pull the plug? So he's, you know, if he can climb a little bit, but more importantly than climbing his batting average is when he's hitting balls to right center and then breaking balls to left, that's when you know he's applying a very good approach, because that's when he's strong. Driving fastballs, staying inside of him. But staying inside of him, hitting him the other way, allows him to wait and see off speed, and then he hammers them to left. So, you know, the fact that it's not 4 guys hot for 3 weeks and they win a lot of games, and then those same 4 guys being cold and you lose a lot of games, they're floating. I know they're not trying to do it, but that's what's happening right now. And with the pitching, they don't need much. In most starts, they don't need much. I like them more than I have in the last few years right now, the Phillies. And I'm saying that with 3 guys hurt. By the way, if I can make a point on Real Muto, I really think the fans want to pay attention to how different the team is without him behind the plate. Because
how does that affect the staff?
Oh, he's so good with the staff. So good with the staff. Probably the most important part of that position is running the staff, knowing what pitches to call when a guy's got his stuff, knowing what pitches to call when he doesn't seem to have what was his best pitch. Like, their relationship is so important, and his is fantastic with the staff. His blocking ability, his throwing almost shuts down the opponent's running game. And that has now all of a sudden become more important than it was in the last few years. So when he hits, it's a bonus, and he does hit. So when he hits, to me, that's icing on the cake. It's going to be interesting. But, I think it's meniscus is what I heard.
Yeah, now, Dave Dombrowski said about a month. I was surprised at that timetable.
Yeah, I had that done. And I had it done when they weren't as good as they are now. But it's basically, it's an incision, and they clean it up arthroscopically, and then they sew it shut, and they want you up right away. Years ago, they'd have you sitting without putting weight on it for a week. I didn't do that anyway because I couldn't afford to. If I was out of lineup, somebody was about to take my job. So I was jogging on the first day and watching every step that I don't step on a sidewalk crack. But no, I think he'd be back in a month unless they don't need him back. Then they may extend it a week or 2 more. I think that would be better if they could. The same with Turner.
Yeah, by the way, some updates on Turner and Marsh. And Marsh is DHing tonight at Reading. He'll have 4 to 5 at bats. He'll play center field tomorrow and then could be back in Baltimore with the Phillies on Saturday. Trey Turner ran today at 100%. He'll run again tomorrow and could possibly be in the lineup in Baltimore this weekend. So you could get Marsh back. You could get Turner back, which brings a whole nother set of questions. With Sosa, what do you do there? What happens when Marsh comes back with the outfield situation? There's a lot of questions for a team that's 10 games up.
Yeah, both of those. Obviously, Turner, you inject right in. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. But I think Marsh earned that, too, from his teammates. I really do. I don't think anybody's going to bark at him being inserted right back in.
No.
He's been a really, I shouldn't say a pleasant surprise, but I thought it was going to be more of a battle to see who the starting 3 outfielders were. when the season started, and he just took that. He just said, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to go out and play, and he did. And boy, he's having a tremendous season. Was Marshall also a hamstring?
Slight hamstring, yes.
Yeah, so I've had them on both legs, and man, they're rough because they reoccur. When you think they're better and they're healed, you stretch and you stretch and you stretch and you continue to stretch. It's the movements that are surprising are the ones that tend to have that injury reoccur. So for the Phillies, the sake of the Phillies doing some damage and maybe winning a World Series, you got to hope that neither of those guys, but especially Turner, doesn't have a reoccurring hamstring issue. I would say that's another good thing to have this kind of a lead is maybe they shut him down from stealing bases. Maybe, if they maintain that lead. Why? They might just simply shut him down from stealing. And it's hard to tell a guy, take it easy. Like I said, it's the movements that are unexpected. A jab step here, a change of direction, and all of a sudden, boom, you feel it.
Yeah.
And,
definitely. The hamstring is one of those things where, and you almost mentally, it's tough for you to overcome it because the feeling that you had when you got it, you don't want that feeling ever again.
Well, mine was horrible. I had mine. I actually should have come out of the game. I went after a one-hop single, but on my way, I felt like I stepped in a hole. That's not what happened. There was no hole. It was the hamstring balling up. And it almost felt like my right leg was just a hair shorter than the other. That was the misstep. But I stayed in the game, 2 outs. What's the chances somebody hits a ball to me? And Junior Felix hit a sinking line drive. Of course, I'm charging. I got to dive forward. As I was in the air, I heard it like a snap. And just what you said, that one took a while. I want to say that was 7 or 8 weeks. I started by walking backwards in warning track in the outfield pregame and then jogging. But I remember Yankee Stadium in my first start back, standing in the outfield, looking side to side and thinking, I don't know if I can cover this ground. It was that hesitation of, like you said, I'm fearful. Is my first step going to be strong? Is it going to blow out? So I'm glad. It sounds to me like they gave Turner a little extra time. Is that how you feel? Like they want to make sure?
Well, I tell you this. He thought he was getting close, and I guess he had a setback. That was 2 weeks ago. And now, that was 2 weeks ago. He did travel to London, not to play, I think to just keep working out with the team. But, look, the funny part about Turner, too, is, this is a guy who's number 2 in the lineup and got off to a great start. He's hitting 350 on base. But they've expanded the lead to 10 games without him. So what happens with Sosa? What do you do there?
If it's me, he becomes a guy that he was so good at prior. He was so good at coming off the bench. Maybe he could give him more starts, especially if they maintain a good cushion. And remember, that's what Marcel Latchman was getting me for. He said, I know you can play all 3 outfield spots. I know you can pinch run. I know you can pinch hit. So his thought was, I'll be able to rest guys. I'll go into the playoffs with my team well rested, but I don't want to just take him out of lineup because you need to face live pitching. So he's got the parts right now to do that. Sosa, I think, just becomes a very good role player. Very good.
Yeah.
And if somebody gets hurt from now to the end of the season, which is inevitable, he can jump right back in and be an everyday player for as long as it takes.
It also feels then if Sosa goes to be kind of a utility guy, does that put more of a squeeze on a guy like Merrifield, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, even Pache is probably thinking, this Dahl comes in, you got the lefty righty on the bench, and they got Pop. Sometimes that's what it is. Again, I'm going to say, Mike, that's what I think the staff is doing already. A little bit of trial and error here and there. And as you get past the All-Star break, it's going to become even more serious. Let's balance out the role players on the bench. Let's make sure we know what the roles are of the bullpen. I'm not convinced of who's going to be closing at the end of the season.
That was going to be my other follow-up is, do you like the back bullpen? Is Alvarado, Hoffman? I like Kerkering a lot. I don't know if they feel ready to give him that role, or is there an outside of the organization arm they need to go get?
Well, Strom has been fantastic. Hoffman's been fantastic. And Kerkering, I agree with you. His stuff is phenomenal. He doesn't seem to, get too wired up for the moment. He doesn't seem to. But I just don't trust Alvarado. I mean, he's got great stuff, no doubt. But I just keep seeing that cutter to the back foot of right-handers getting past the catcher, at the worst time.
Yeah, it happened in London.
Did it? Yeah, I don't know if I saw that game, but I know
the Sunday game they lost to the Mets. He kind of, I don't know if it looked like he crossed up Real Muto or what, but it was kind of that back inside, and it kind of got Real Muto probably should have caught it, but he looked like he got a little deep, and it went off the inside of his mitt and got past him, and the Mets tied it up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, trust is everything at the back end of the bullpen, the closer, and they would love to have a tight closer right now because Strom and Hoffman have been so good at setting it up. They've been phenomenal. Even Soto, I don't know what his numbers are, but he seems to be doing pretty good.
When he's good, he's really good, and then he has a night.
Yeah,
He's one of them guys. He'll give you 5 goodies and then a disastrous one.
Yeah, well, I think they placed him properly then because he's like that middle of the game. We need an inning or two when a starter doesn't go far. And Ruiz seems to be, a guy that can just chew up innings and pitch every day. That's what it seems like.
Yep.
Again, I'm just watching these games on TV, so I don't know. But, and he seems like a gamer. He goes right at people. So their roles in the bullpen look pretty good, except the trust in a closer. What's your opinion, Mike? Do you think Alvarado will close by the end of the season, or do you think he'll? I wouldn't mind bringing Alvarado in a tight spot. It's going to sound strange, but bases loaded, nobody out.
Well,
because he can strike 3 guys out.
Yeah, exactly. I think, Dave, they like him. The way when they went to the World Series in 22, they used him all over the place. It was, hey, and they use it based on, hey, the left-handed part of their lineup's coming up in the 7th. Get those, let's get that group out right there. He was kind of trying to pair them up with guys in that whatever inning the lefties were coming up. So if it was the 7th, he'd use them in the 7th. If it was the 8th, he'd use them in the 8th. And if it was the 9th, he kind of used it there, as opposed to just holding him for the 9th inning. I think they want to get out of using him in the traditional 9th inning role.
I agree with you. And that's probably the conversations post-game in the manager's office with the staff that we will never know. but I believe that's happening. Strom and Hoffman have been so good that you might start thinking one of those guys may close for us.
Yeah. Hoffman's been unbelievable. 0.93. I mean, Strom is like 0.67. I mean, those two guys have been dominant. Kerkering's been unbelievable. So they do have, some options and some arms, but they look for that one other guy. We'll see. It's only June. The trade deadline is a little way. A lot of buzz about finding an outfielder, though, with Rojas, who you and I both seemingly like, but I don't know, his defense doesn't seem as tight this year, and I don't know if his offense has come around enough for you.
If the defense was what I remember it being last year and the very beginning of this year, it would be enough for me because of the pitching. We can't. I played center field, and sometimes you don't get credit for saving runs. You know what I mean? People just look at, well, he drove in 40 runs. But if he saved 22, that other guys would not have caught balls in the gap or whatever. Then numbers-wise, you never get that added to your RBI total. But if you ask pitchers, who do you want out there? If he's playing strong defense, the pitcher is always going to start a game with the confidence in themselves. I'll make pitch. Well, they got to believe that. And then I want the best defense behind me. That is what I think they'll say. I don't think you'd find a pitcher that would take a below-average center fielder that hits for more power. I think they'd take their chances with a guy like Rojas. But it's got to be above average defense daily. You know what I mean? Daily. And so far, it really hasn't been that. We've seen a couple of slip-ups along the way. The darn guy, if he can stay in there as a starter, he may end up with 30 to 40 bags.
Yeah.
He's stealing a lot of bases.
He can run. We'll tell you that much. He can certainly run.
Yeah.
Dave Gallagher, 9-year MLB veteran, played with the Phillies in, 95, I believe, was his Phillies tenure. Yeah. And then, of course, right here on the Sports Bash, always love talking baseball with Dave. Dave, we'll do it again soon, pal.
All right, Mike, take care.
All right, Dave Gallagher, everybody, at Dave Gallagher 22 on the X platform. Follow him there. He always gives a lot of great baseball takes. He's also pretty big in the MLPA, the youth baseball, and a whole bunch more. We'll talk more baseball throughout the summer. I feel like we always get great insight. He always has great stories, too. You know, Harold Baines. He played with Harold Baines. Just kind of throws that in there, right? He played with Cal Ripken, by the way, and many more great stars. He played on a bunch of different teams throughout his 9-year career. Always love catching up with Dave Gallagher. So we'll keep him in the thoughts for the rest of the summer as this Phillies lead expands. But he said he was on that Angels team, 13-game lead in August, and they lost the division. And I don't think it was a wild card back then, so no playoffs for you with a 13-game lead in August. Mike Gill with you, telling you about my friend Rocco over at Key Acura of Atlantic City. You know, this is the best deal that I've seen yet. In all the deals that they've given us, and I'm like, man, how do they do that? This deal is probably the best one. Go to another Acura dealer. Get the quote. Bring that quote over to Key Acura. An estimate, written estimate. Bring it there. They'll beat that price by $500 and then give you $500 extra on your trade. Unbelievable deal. It's right now and through June 30th, get a 36-month lease on a 2024 Integra for just $299 a month. Under $300 for a car payment. I would be doing backflips right now for that deal. $49.95 down. Key Acura, Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. Coming up, the big three.
It's the Sports Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
536 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Download the app. The Apple Store, Google Play. You can message us through the app on your phone. And, of course, if you're watching the show live on the X platform at 973 ESPN, use the hashtag SBLive. You see the Phillies lineup scrolling at the bottom of the video screen. And today's big three is here.
Mike, I wanted to start with, there's been a lot of speculation about Dan Hurley, UConn, the Lakers. But we have heard from Dan Hurley himself today, Mike. Dan Hurley was on the Dan Le Batard show just about, I think this is about an hour ago, a couple hours ago. And he explained his side of the story, saying that there was no leverage involved. He said it was one of the worst takes he's heard. He says that he was a leverage play for him to talk to the Lakers. He says, I didn't need leverage because he said he actually already had a new contract in place paying him as the highest paid coach in college basketball. Hurley went on to say that there are some things he still would like to fix and adjust at UConn, like increasing some of his staff salaries, some other things. But he says, I want those things adjusted. But the sense that he said, quote, the sense that there was some conspiracy to get me a sweeter deal at UConn is just a lazy take, he said. He went on to say that maybe there was a number he could have been offered that would have swayed him. But he said, ultimately, quote, it was a gut-wrenching decision for me. Sunday night into Monday morning where I had a deadline in my mind. I was torn, didn't really know what I was going to do until I went to bed and woke up the next morning. Mike, your reaction to Dan Hurley's words.
Dan Hurley is smart enough to know that Woj is getting drug in the mud here, and that people think that Woj made up a story to essentially get Hurley a new offer from UConn. So he's trying to now fix it.
For his friend.
Yeah, because he knows that this looks bogus. I mean, as I see it, this is how we discussed this a little yesterday. So Hurley was never really a candidate. He had a job offer from Kentucky, and he turned it down.
Correct.
Kentucky then, UConn then says, well, he turned down Kentucky. Why do we need to give him more money? Well, where else is he going? Not leaving us to go to Kentucky. Where else is he going to leave us to go to? So Woj puts out that the Lakers have interest. And the Lakers interview him. They offer him 6 years, $70 million. And he says no. Well, Woj, keep in mind, has a disdain for Shams Charania of The Athletic. So Woj uses this opportunity to get one over on Shams that he has the biggest story, and then discredit Shams' reporting of J.J. Redick. He then also gets to beat Shams to the report that Hurley isn't taking the job. So now he is 2 up on Shams. All while Shams is laughing and saying, you were wrong on both accounts, even though you're saying you're right, because this story's made up. And now Hurley has to go out on the scene and do the car wash today to try to wash the problem by saying, my guy Woj made himself look like an idiot, and in the process soiled me, so now I have to go try to fix this to say I actually had interest in a job that I had no interest in.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
Yeah, Hurley went on to admit that, leaving his family behind, how his family's in the Northeast, it would have been very difficult.
He had no intention of leaving.
I don't think he was ever leaving.
He said today on whatever show I heard that his dad gets to go, loves the Big East tournament, gets to go to the Big East tournament. He goes to 10 UConn games a year.
Yep.
All that stuff. He wasn't giving that up to go to the freaking Lakers. I mean, the Lakers, I don't know. We live in a world now.
He did say also in the same interview, he said, to leave that all behind, the part that you're talking about, there probably is a number.
Yeah, a number, and they didn't reach it.
Right.
Are we in a spot in the sports world where the brands that were once the big brands are no longer have the same oomph?
100%.
A guy left Kentucky to go to Arkansas.
Yep.
They try to get a guy to leave UConn, and he doesn't. Kentucky's not the same. Syracuse isn't the same. Georgetown's not the same. You name school, they're not the same. And the Lakers, I think, are falling into that world where the Lakers are they the Lakers like as we knew them? No.
No. Not at all. It's changing across the board in all sports, but especially basketball. Mike, my second story for you is probably one of the dumbest stories of the day, but we have to touch on it. So the good news is the Eagles have been cleared of any tampering charges by the NFL. According to the NFL's investigation, they did not tamper in trying to sign Saquon Barkley. That's the solid, good, okay, we're in the clear part of the story. The NFL said there wasn't sufficient enough evidence to prove the Eagles did anything wrong. But they did find the Atlanta Falcons, Mike, were guilty of violating the NFL's anti-tampering policy with not one, not two, but 3 different free agents, Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, and Charlie Warner. And for that violation, they are being fined $250,000 and losing a 5th-round pick. And I got to tell you, Mike, this feels like the most slap-on-the-wrist punishment I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. They basically said, go ahead and tamper. If you're going to go get 3 starting players, or at least probably 2 starting players,
right,
and all you're losing is a 5th-round pick, that's a slap on the wrist. So if you can go get them early, go get them.
I mean, talk about a waste. I mean, the NFL did all this investigating. Remember, they were supposed to have the answer before the draft, and then they decided, we haven't done enough investigating. So it's 2 months later, and it's $250,000 and a 5th-round pick.
Yeah, no, it's and the Eagles got nothing, and who knows what the Eagles did or didn't do or whatever, but the Eagles didn't get any fine,
right,
or lose any draft picks for apparently their role in the Saquon Barkley thing.
Yeah, the NFL report here says that they found nothing that shows that they either neglected or purposely tried to negotiate outside of the process for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad look for the league to not penalize them more and say it's okay to tamper. You're saying that tampering's not that big of a deal. Maybe it's not.
It just is so insane to me that, like, you spent all these months investigating, and that's how you're punishing them? I mean, what a weak move by the NFL. It's almost like they're saying, give us $250,000 to cover the cost of the investigation.
Yeah.
It's like, give us the money to cover the time we spent.
Yeah, I'm surprised that was the only. I mean, a 5th-round pick and a couple. What was the fine?
$250,000.
$250,000. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not even $500,000. It's $250,000. I mean, it's practically nothing for an organization that's worth billions of dollars. To me, it's just ridiculous. But we had to mention that. On a more positive note, Mike, how about Merrill Reese? Mike, he is going to be the next broadcaster to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He is this year's Pete Rozelle Award recipient. He joins a very, very exclusive list of broadcasters, Mike, that include guys like Joe Buck and Al Michaels and John Madden, Pat Summerall. He is now on that list with those guys, and he will be honored with this year's Pro Football Hall of Fame class.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting story that came out today. I guess pretty surprising for him that just kind of came out. He's the longest tenured local announcer still, Merrill. And, man, you wonder how much longer is he going to keep doing this? I mean, he's got to be – Merrill's got to be in his 80s, right?
This is his 48th year, too.
Yeah. It's, a tremendous career. It's almost like for someone like I'm 47. He's the only broadcaster. Would you say 48 years?
This would be his 48th season.
Yeah, so he started in 76. He's the only broadcaster that I know that I've ever heard do an Eagles game. I can't even imagine being the person that comes in next and who would have that job next. But, Merrill's got his own style. Some people like him, some people don't, just like everything. But Merrill Reese is an institution for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that that he's still doing it at, a pretty high level.
He'll be 82 years old this year.
82 years old.
Before the season kicks off, he turns 82.
That's and we saw John Sterling step aside. He was in his 80s with the Yankees and decided not to do it anyway. Bob Uecker's still doing it with the Brewers. I think he's in his 90s.
I'll pull up Bob
Hubie
Uecker.
Brown is in his 90s.
I know Hubie's 90, yeah.
Yeah. But, Reese is a guy, he began kind of as a sportscaster doing high school football games, and you think about going from high school football to where he is now. He owns a local radio station outside of Philly up there, and, I think he got his start as a color commentator back in, like, the 60s, if my memory, if Merrill's career serves me here, but the fact that he is still doing this, and I would imagine that he has said in an interview one time that he would not retire, that he basically, was going to keep going until they won't let him do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my thoughts, Mike, on this story was the fact that think about how blessed Philly sports fans have been. Harry Kalas for baseball, Mark Zumoff and Tom McGinnis for the Sixers, Merrill Reese for the Eagles, Gene Hart for the Flyers, and now Timmy Saunders and Jim Jackson for the Flyers. Like, we have had some amazing broadcasters in Philadelphia.
No question. I think that's part of the fabric of why Philly fans are as passionate as well, is that they connect with those broadcasters, right?
Yep.
I mean, Scott Fransky's starting to get himself on that level where he's been here long enough now where Fransky has some iconic calls that start to put you on that level too.
Yeah, he's getting into that category of where, like, people identify even more and more. And Tom McCarthy to an extent as well. I think Tom is...
He's going to have... I mean, McCarthy... And I don't think McCarthy does a bad job by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously he's past the Harry stage now where he is the guy. But I don't know that he is looked at in the same vein yet as, like, where you're that iconic guy. Now, because one of the things with McCarthy, too, and Harry did Westwood One, games on the radio and stuff. McCarthy does a lot of other stuff. I mean, does a lot of national stuff. He does the NFL, does the NCAA tournament. He does a lot of other stuff other than just the Phillies.
Right. Yeah, it's still amazing though the quality and the caliber. Like, there's so many times, Mike, I'll listen to I'll turn on like a game like another MLB market or an NBA game in a local market, or you hear and nothing against those other broadcasters, they're not that good. Some of them, some of them just don't.
Well, I think part of that is
panache.
I think a lot of that comes with when you hear your guy all the time, you get used to that, and when you hear somebody else, it's almost like when a night where McGinnis isn't doing the game on the radio and the other guy is, you're like, that guy, it's just because he's different. So if you're hearing guys in a different market and you don't hear them every week, you're not used to their style. True. I think if you heard them every week, you might say, I like this guy and not that guy. You're only hearing them in such a small sample and you're comparing it to what you like.
True. I feel like when when you hear certain broadcasters, you just know. You know what I mean? You hear.
I
know.
People. I know plenty of friends of mine who are Giants fans. I know a specific Giant fan. He might even be listening now, who thinks Merrill's awful. I know other people who think Merrill's the greatest thing ever. The way just they're an Eagles fan though.
True.
So that's just kind of the nature of the biz. Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. That's today's big three. We'll do it again tomorrow. It's a happy hour Friday tomorrow. I think Sal Palantonio is on a Sal Pal Friday tomorrow. I think he emailed me while I was in London, and we were going back and forth trying to set up a little Sal Pal Friday. Bob Wankel will talk Phillies and Baltimore. Big weekend series in Baltimore. A lot of Phillies fans going to Baltimore. It's sold out all 3 games down there.
You're going too.
That's the plan. Our winner. That's the plan, yes. Okay. Our winner's going. We gave this trip away at Maynard's back on opening day, and that day has come, Saturday, down in Baltimore. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, get ready to get out of here. Happy Hour Friday tomorrow. We'll have some good picks for you tomorrow on tomorrow's show. Thanks to Dave Gallagher this hour. Andrew DeCecco earlier. Josh has game night up next. Phil's in Boston tonight, taking on the Sox. Final game of the 3-game series. Who will win the series? Find out. Phil's trying to take another series down in Boston before they head to Baltimore. We've got game 4 tomorrow night. Does it feel like a sweep, or is this one of those courtesies? Dallas wins, got to go back to Boston, and then you close out on your home court, How about that thing last night where they did the whole retiring of Brady? They had it on the same night.
Dude, Tom Brady looked like a Ken doll. He looked like the tan was fake.
Impressed.
The hair was really well done. He looked like a model.
He is, wow. You're really impressed. He was on the Jimmy Trainer this week.
Brady?
Yep.
Nice.
Quick, 10 minutes. Apparently he was representing the Super Bowl. He was pushing a product.
Okay.
So he was on 10 minutes, but it was a good quick 10 minutes, but he was good. Talking about his, how his broadcasting style, what he thinks, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
he got emotional.
So would you go to the Celtic game or the Brady retiring?
Oh, I always go to the game. I can watch the retirement speech later.
Big crowd for Brady last night.
Huge crowd.
Huge.
Huge.
All right, I'm out of here. Have a great night, everybody. More Sports Bash tomorrow right here on 97.3 ESPN.